Legendary Pals, welcome back to SMITE Masters here, powered by Prime Gaming. Of course, I want to talk about something a little different. You might see, not only the laptops we're using right here, but of course, the Ryzen R10 desktops that all of the players are playing on currently. And that's why I'm thrilled to say that we're happy that Alienware is back with us here in Season 9, and of course, providing such excellent PCs for these players to play on. And of course, if you want to be able to get your own, you'll be able to go buy those at Alienware. Of course, you also want to follow them at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram, and go to alienwarearena.com in order to join in for their global community as well, for giveaways and things like that and more. So thanks again to Alienware here for being with us in Season 9. My name's Gord. Joining me on the desk this time, it's going to be Ro.
I'm back.
We've been hanging around for a little while, and I think you're excited finally to kind of sink your hands in here, because we've got a really fun matchup. I mean, based on what we've seen today, I'm expecting a lot out of the Levi's and the Kings here.
Yeah, look, we saw a really fast Leviathans game. 27 minutes they ended against Warriors. Maybe Warriors didn't have their...
What world do we live in that 27 minutes is really fast?
I know. Look, you missed last week. You weren't here, so this has been a great refreshing thing for them the first game. But now they're up against Kings, who just had a 50-something minute game.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It took them a little while, but after a certain point, it feels very much, I think, akin to Kings games that we've seen in the past, where it's like if they haven't lost by like 18 minutes, they're gonna win. Whether it takes them another 30 to do so, they're gonna be able to pull it out. And so they end up finding themselves here. Of course, we'll be watching the Titans again a little bit later, playing on against the Warriors, and that one's going to be a very fun matchup. Winner of this match, though, does just advance straight to Group 6. They don't have to play anymore. They're done for the day. They get to relax. If you're the Kings, that could potentially mean 3 games in a row and you're done. If you're the Levi's, it could still theoretically mean 3 games in a row, but one had a much longer gap between it than the other two. So we'll see how they end up going. This is where things shift to best of 3s, and that changes a little bit of the dynamic, right? Like, it's not just, hey, can you come in and just stomp really hard with a comp, although neither of these teams, I guess the Levi's kind of did that. This is more, cool, you won with that. What are you going to do when we strip it away? Yeah,
the fun part is both teams have now seen the other team play. So it's almost like we're getting deeper into like a best-of-5 set, for example, where they start strategizing against each other. It's different from the SPL, where, we might have seen them play a week ago, but there's been a week of scrims between then.
Yeah.
So now we know exactly, if I'm, say, Kings, I know exactly what Leviathans have picked, what they've got in the pool so far. Obviously, they have more than what we haven't seen. But, I imagine Leviathans will go back to something similar, something relatively early game, and Kings will go something to, I want to get to level 20 and win team fights type play.
It's going to be fun. I mean, team fights, look, if you're looking at 2 team fight teams, this is going to be a very, very fun, let's say, 35-minute mark. I'm going to just go ahead and predict that we're going to see that. And maybe that'll be the end fight. Maybe it'll just be halfway through. Who knows? Either way, it's going to be, I think, something enticing to watch. And you can already see, I mean, just like you had said, adaptation that you're not used to seeing at the beginning of a best of 3. Ymir and Artemis are not your typical first band.
Yeah, same with Cabrakan from Kings. Leviathans. Yakor was the one that played the Cabrakan and went this, unorthodox build of Book of Thoth first, and ended up being very effective in their double hunter composition. So Leviathans and Kings already taking away gods that the other team has played earlier in the day. Yeah,
Yamoja is maybe the one that's the most standard. I'm going to latch onto it, but only because I have to obligatory mention that Rong Yu is just absolutely insane at Yamoja. And there's going to be the Khepri, another ban actually taken out by the Kings last time.
That Khepri seems to be more educated by what Kings have played in the SPL so far. Even last year they played the Khepri as well. So if we ban away Ymir, which genetics is obviously valued in the last game, what's he going to go to next? Well, Khepri is probably the first thing I think of. Maybe Horus as well, but he doesn't seem to be picking that too much lately.
It does feel like limiting genetics, not just the theme of picks and bans, but really kind of a win condition against the Kings. Not easy to do, but it does feel like something that it helps you out. And with the bans on the other side, admittedly, Cabrakan not really played over in the duo lane too often, but still, I'm going to put him under the blanket of a Guardian because that's what he is. So it's 4 that get banned out here. The Kings now having to shuffle this around. Jingwei has been the first pick.
And it's open.
Every single time so far today. Granted, it's only 2 games, but Levi's did it first. And something, I don't know, there's a rumblings in the air that makes me feel like, we're going to see that.
For that third ban for Kings, that's a hard choice to make. Do we leave AMC and Jing both open? We get Jing, they get AMC, or the other way around? Is that worth it? They just decided to take away the AMC and let Leviathans have Jing, which that man is fantastic on.
Now, here's a question for you. And we talked about it a little bit on Waiting Room. Last week, Baron was massive, and Jingwei was banned. Baron was getting through.
That's true.
So far today, it's kind of been the opposite. Jingwei's been getting through, and Baron's been banned, but he's available this time. Do you top pick him if you're the Kings?
I think Variety was one person that was picking Baron the most. I know he used to do it to counter Osiris a lot, and Osiris is open. That was banned at least game 1 today. So maybe he wants to... He probably won't top 2 it, I don't think. You know, I don't think these SPL players are that confident in the Baron pick, whereas the SEC players really loved it because they were almost always scaling. But game 1 today, we saw Leviathans end relatively quickly against the Warriors, so I can't imagine Kings want to put all their eggs in one basket. If they go too late game with that Baron solo, then it gives Leviathans a chance of just running away with the early game.
Well, they're burning through their bank time at this point. And you had mentioned it earlier, like having to contemplate a little bit for the AMC, just trying to determine that, the Jingwei, or both, which one's going to make it through. And now trying to figure out, I guess, where they want to go with this one. Again, the meta has shifted so heavily. And someone that has been towards the top, I didn't even think to talk about him up here, but King Arthur was very highly coveted last week. Again, maybe mixed success than what you would expect, and maybe not the warrior that you would have expected to take over after all the changes.
No, but he has a decent amount of clear with that bluestone, but again, you know, I think he does struggle in this mid-game area, especially if he gets behind and he cannot get that energy and can't get his big ultimates off. But he gets to hit the wave a lot, which means he gets a lot of energy in the early game and has some relative success. We did see it banned away from Nika, so obviously some teams are playing it. Nika was playing it before 9.5 even came live, so you know it's still valued, but that means no Baron. King Arthur quite good into Baron, so probably no Baron on the side of Leviathans either.
Yeah, it's going to be keeping a little bit more control, I think, in terms of picks. Man, maybe that's why they had to burn through so much of the bank time to be able to keep things going their way, but now the Xing Chen comes through.
Fun fact, I believe this is the top 3 that we've seen all 3 games so far. I believe Leviathans top 3'd this, or at least they had these 3 gods, and then... Well, I guess Solo Troll took the Ula, but Titans top 3'd these gods as well, and now they're again going back to it. So it just seems to be this setup Guardian in Xing Chen, and then 2 of, I guess, the strongest hunters, you could say.
The good news is, if you're the Kings, that this, like you said, this 3 you just beat, so you should have some confidence in that.
Granted, it was an Ula solo. Maybe that changes some things.
Yeah, maybe Shinto all of a sudden pulling it into mid makes it a little more of an impact play, or maybe early on impact play. I guess we'll see. It did get first blood at the beginning of the day. But you get that, plus the Xing Chen feels like it's going to be good against the Chernobog, especially with what we saw earlier. The Chernobog was paired alongside that Morrigan, which is something that the Kings could have easily gone into and had like a pseudo-double Hunter comp.
They still could.
Now that kind of slows it down at least a little bit.
In general, I think Double Hunter not great into Xing Chen as well, which maybe is the reason we see this god so often now. And Terra, another god that can't be picked up as well. So King Arthur, Terra, quite effective against Xing Chen and quite effective against Jingwei as well.
And Terra, just a good genetics pick. Like, I think for a long time, and even now if you watch the SEC, it still feels more European style to me. Like, if you're watching EU SMITE, Terra has to be on the list of gods that will be played. Whether it's in solo or in duo, just kind of depends on the meta, but it feels very much at home for genetics.
Yeah, and that's when I look at it, it just seems like a very valuable pick for him especially. And then when you consider the fact that he's had, I guess, 2, and then there's a Kabrakan ban and a Umoja ban as well. A lot of Guardians taken away from him already and still get such a high value pick in Terra. That seems like a really good pickup for Kings in that 3rd slot.
And it keeps things, I think, a little simpler as we look towards these latter 4 bans from each team. Bakasura makes sense. Jungle dealt with. The Neath kind of catches me off guard. Maybe not too surprising. We've seen her banned a lot last week and this week, but it's an easy mid choice.
It's telling to me. Leviathans so far have played Hunters in mid both games, and now they're banning away Hunters in mid as well. So it's telling to me that they really respect these Hunter mids, these double Hunter team comps. We just saw a triple Hunter team comp from Leviathans if you include Oloran as a Hunter as well. So it looks like SPL teams so far, just based on the small amount of information that we have from today, at least these SPL teams, not so much Scarabs and Valkyries, they are valuing this double Hunter team comp.
And Izanami is one that kind of flew under the radar for most of last week, right? Maybe looked at every now and then, but was not necessarily a high priority. But like you said, making sure that they're valuing what could play against us in mid and what do we not want to deal with. And so instead, it's going to be the run back to the new Wa.
That's fair.
And look, I think if I hadn't just watched a game where Big Man Tings does save,
we might question it, right? Yeah, I would probably question it as well, because it just seems like such a scaling pick, and then, are they going to be able to scale against this double Hunter? But they just did this. They just picked the Nuar into these gods before, and now we see Baron into King Arthur. Not a particularly good matchup, but it will scale with the Nuar into the late game.
And something you had kind of mentioned, I was so stuck on the fact that we just saw Uller solo. I was like, where are they sending this guy?
I would hope solo.
Have to reset, right? Uller's going mid, Baron should be solo. Nemesis there in the jungle. And the thing that Baron has brought, and we saw this, a lot more with like the Nox, the E set going into the support during the last few patches, but like he can be a little more tanky. He can still be a frontliner compared to some of the other mages.
He can. He kind of plays in between both roles to a certain extent, where he can set up for his team, I guess in this case his hunters. He can heal and support in a way in that regard, and he can do a little bit of damage himself to frontline. He does get percentage pen online with his first item, Warlock Sash, and then eventually builds a ethereal staff as well. So he will, not chunk these tanks, but he will annoy them to a certain extent, and then they become at risk to this double hunter team comp, especially when you include a Nemesis ult.
So you keep the Nuwa and the Kali from last time around.
Fair
Granted,
enough.
you're going up against something a little different, although 3 of the gods at least are the same. King Arthur versus the Bologna, and I guess like the Chernobog versus the Artemis. Like, what kind of trades are the Kings making here? Is it going to be a similar style?
I think similar style. I think Kings will have a little more early game prowess. I think the Bologna was, well, it has early game, but it was kind of nullified by an Ula because you just can't do much in that lane anyway. Whereas King Arthur should have pressure this time, pretty clear pressure against Baron. And then Chernobog, if they want to play that solo side of the map where King Arthur has pressure, Chernobog can ult for the slow, he could even fly over for a blue buff invade, and then you have Nuwa global pressure as well. The only downside to that, or the only downside to their early game team comp is the Kali. That is someone that is going to take a while to scale.
And we saw that last time, but although it's that interesting conversation that comes in with the Kings where it's like they might have early game pressure in most bots.
Will they use it?
Are they going to even bother with it? I mean, maybe it'll give them farm.
In some ways, it's just insurance for them. If they need to fight, they can fight. If Leviathans are taking a fight on the King's side of the map, then they have some insurance and they can fight back, so they have something to fall back on to carry them, to buy them that ticket to the late game.
It's going to give them, like you said, that smooth sailing early on, if needed. Otherwise, they'll do what they do all the time, which is just farm for a little while, and that's exactly, I think, what Twig would love, right? Just get as much online as you can. And that's where things get which is convoluted in this game, and specifically in this matchup. The way these teams like to play, like you'd said, Kings aren't looking for the fights, but can fight right here. Yeah. Leviathans will more than likely be looking for the fights, but is that going to actually act against them if they do it too early on?
It could, but they also just may take the poke trade and get that small amount of pressure, make a little bit more space for them to rotate around the map, and then start looking at objectives. We saw Titans, for example, look at objectives relatively early on, and were able to get the first Fire Giant in that game right as well. They didn't get much from it because, you know, maybe their team comp had issues in that regard, but Leviathans, when they got an early Fire Giant against the Warriors, they ran away with the game.
Well, I'm excited to watch it. If you are the Kings here, you had kind of already mentioned King Arthur should have a better matchup up against the Baron, so should be able to get some pressure over there. You've got a Terra and a Chernobog over in the dual lane versus the Jingwei and the Xingqian. If you are the Leviathans, where are you trying to bolster your defenses?
You might just be scaling with them. They have double hunters, so
You're just hanging out.
Yeah, but they get to objectives first is the important part. So I think Leviathans and Kings, their comps both scale here, but Leviathans will peak just before Kings. So if they can press that go button right when they get that objective DPS and still have the early pressure, then they could maybe take an objective.
Especially with the two hunters being a little more centralized than what it was last time, right? With the Titans, you got to get sought to rotate all the way across the map. Sometimes that's impossible to do. He didn't even have teleport, so it's not like you could keep up maybe as easily with the Bologna. This time around, it's much more centralized, at least around a Gold Fury, maybe causing something interesting or an early lead for the Leviathans, something that they could pull in their favor. This is where I think we have to try and tackle that mid lane matchup specifically. Nuwa, like I said, most times I'm second-guessing this pick no matter what. Kings just had a good game, but admittedly for like 25 minutes, it wasn't really doing anything. It was just kind of there.
And that's how she works as a god, but it's really hard to pressure her as well. She can safely sit under the tower, throw out the fog, that'll clear the minions. If an axe is coming your way, I'll summon some minions in front of it and absorb that axe, and then I'm fine. And if you're really in trouble, don't go ahead and use that ultimate, right? And then, but she's just not going to be leaving the lane much early because she doesn't have pressure against the Ula. She definitely can't walk by an Ula if Ula's waiting there. So the only way she can really affect the map in the early game is, you know, farming and trying to get some global gold, and then just with a global ultimate.
Was it Mifflin had said earlier? Ula, like, you know what he's going to do? He's got two axes and he's going to throw at least one of them at you.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny, personally. But either way,
Funny guy.
We'll see whether or not Shinto is able to land those axes, as you highlighted, because New Law will have that safety. Also, if Kali's just going to be around for some of these fights early on, that's maybe going to be one of the bigger questions. Level 5s, are there a lot of potentials for some of those fights, or do you think that, the Kings want to play late? I'm not even going to ask about them. Will the Levi's fight around some ults?
I think they should try, and they could maybe cap catch Captain Twig, who was invading a little bit early game in that Kali as well. So if he's stealing back camps, then they can kill him there.
That's going to be, I think, a big opportunity, a big opening for the Leviathans. Again, winner of this one gets straight forward to Group 6. They don't have to play it, well, not just this game, this set.
That's right.
They get straight forward to Group number 6, and they get themselves a nice coasting Friday that they don't have to worry about. But we'll see whether or not they can do it here, and they have to kick it off on the right foot in game number 1.
And it's going to be the difference maker. Game 1 definitely going to be looking to set the pace for the rest of this set. Can the Camelot Kings push it to game number 1, or will the Atlantis Leviathans be able to take first blood and secure themselves as the dominant team for this event? We already saw Leviathans play very aggressively, very quickly last game to secure their victory over the Oni Warriors. Can they do it this time around?
Yeah, I think that's the conversation that the desk brings up so aptly, is whether or not the Leviathans will be able to leverage some of these early game pieces. Where are they going to center that aggression? Who's the easiest target to shut down? Pre-5, you probably want to put all that aggression on Big Man Tings. Once Nuwa gets that ultimate available to her, it becomes a little bit more nuanced, the conversation of how that dive is going to look. And it doesn't look nearly as good. I'm sorry.
Nuanced.
Nuanced.
Yeah, you said nuanced.
Nuanced, yeah.
Yeah, nuanced.
All right. I'm a poet, and I did not even seem to realize.
I thought you did that on purpose, but
No.
I guess...
No, I'm good.
I
No.
guess I'm seeing things where they aren't. Ignore me.
No, I mean, yeah, you're right to say that Nuwa sounds like nuanced.
That is the point that I was trying to point out. Yeah, absolutely. But left-hand side, actually, already, Mifflin, Rongu taking a little bit of pressure. And let's talk about this left-hand lane a little bit. We've seen Terra come out a few times throughout the course of last week. And this time around, in the hands of Genetics, maybe one of his most famous Guardians.
It is, and with Genetics absorbing 2 bans in the first phase, I think it makes sense that he's going to fall back to something that is old and reliable and something that does legitimately have some really good matchups into this Leviathans draft. Anyone Yarkor throws his third ability at will proc the Earthen Fury, the heal. Same with Rongu's Ferocious Roar, the majority of the damage that the Leviathans are looking for. Even Panatom with the auto attack cancel combo is going to proc Earthen Fury just about every single time. So great counter engage tool, but maybe not the best applicator composition. You're not going to get the damage from Earthen Fury nearly as easily. I think that's generally going to be up to Captain Twig. That bleed from the lash going to do a whole lot of the heavy lifting.
And if a big BMT is able to pop one of those Earthen Fury procs, that's potentially a whole lot of damage. And we already saw in the last game, 41k is what BMT was able to pull out on this Nuwa. So combine that with Genetics' ultimate, you could be seeing a big honking number at the end of this game for the mid laner here in the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, Big Man Ting certainly one to play passively throughout the early and get to the portion of the game where Nuwa should start to capping those damage charts, as just having a global ultimate that hits all 5 people by rote, no skill shot, it's going to build up. Eventually, especially with the itemization that Big Man Tings has gone towards in previous games, and seems to be that he's going to be going towards something very similar here in this match. We already had the conversation of where the Leviathans are going to try and root their aggression, but if the Camelot Kings want to get involved on the map, I think you can look no further than Yarkor. This Baron Samdi, largely immobile, going to take a little while to get that survivability, as Shinto is able to strip away this red buff from Big Man Tings. I think that's one place that the Camelot Kings can try and put some of that aggression. But Yarkor is going to be able to hedge his bets at least slightly. Has beads in the first slot. Once he finishes up that Warlock's going to have a whole lot of survivability available to him. So if the Kings do want to do anything in the early end with this composition, I doubt that, it will likely be in the solo lane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But as you mentioned, Yarkor has a fair amount of survivability, has a big heal, is going towards that Warlock's staff that we've been seeing being very popular, choosing not to go towards the Book of Thoth like we saw him do last time. So a little bit extra health there on the solo lane. And Variety, he probably doesn't have a lot of kill pressure by himself, or, you know, at this point, especially if Yarkor's not playing silly, which of course he's not going to. Twig as well, probably wanting to just wait around, farm a little bit more until the late game.
Yeah, and the onus is not on Twig to set the pace. It's on Panatom. And both of these gods scale relatively well into the late game. Kali, obviously, a little bit better, but Nemesis certainly no slouch come the 20-minute mark. if Panatom so chooses, he can start putting some pressure on the map, try and force Captain Twig to alleviate some of that. Anytime this Nemesis gets involved, even if it isn't directly towards Captain Twig, it will slow down this Kali's farm. So I am looking towards this Nemesis to try and make something happen in the next couple of minutes. But with that said, Big Man Tings now has his ultimate. Variety has his ultimate available. Very shortly, the dual lane will tick over to level 5. It's not going to be insanely easy for this Nemesis to get involved, but certainly some places to do so. Keep your eyes on both the dual lanes. Once Wrong U ticks over to 5, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel can strip away some of these CC immunities from the Camelot Kings, and that should spell the go button for Panatom.
It is the early lead in favor of the Leviathans. Both their dual laners hitting 5 first, forcing that wave under tower is going to cost some of the Camelot Kings some gold, but Tings getting blinked on here is going to be able to pop those beads and stun out Panatom to just cancel out that aggression. But now Panatom able to steal away some of this jungle, going to the red buff. Now looking for the purple buff, and this is exactly what you wanted Panatom to do. Set the pace, start taking some farm away from this Kali.
But meanwhile, Captain Twig's able to farm up the right side of the map, takes away those back camps, which trades out Shinto, who's going to drop down that speed, making sure that Panatom will at least have the buff available to him, as Panatom has finished up the left-hand side of the map. The Leviathans have done a very good job so far, just in 5 minutes, of creating control around this red buff. Twice now, Big Man Tings has not been allowed that experience, and I just love this trading of responsibilities, I suppose. Originally, it was Shinto solo invading the red. Now it's Panatom invading red with Shinto, moving over to speed, making sure that that isn't taken away by Captain Twig. Again, just all these small micro plays, these slight ploys on the map to slow down Captain Twig have already started to add up one level disparity between Panatom and the Kali.
And that is, something that I don't think Twig is going to be too worried about moving forward, right? We've already discussed the extensive amount of late game potential he has on this Kali. We know the Kings have no issue going to these late game situations. You want a case example, just check last game, that second match of the day against the Tartarus Titans, going to about 45 minutes. So we know that Twig has no issue being behind in this early game. So just to echo your statement, Mifflin, it's got to be on Panatom to really try and push this forward before Twig can get to that point.
Key difference between this set and that is that the Leviathans have got a composition that can get aggressive. Zapman on the retreat will not have to worry about anything, doesn't even need to necessarily use his relic, as Netroid can't close that gap. Genex tries his best to get involved, try and make something happen on the map, and well, Zapman, ever the veteran, spots him out and is able to retreat. But that key difference being is the Leviathans have got a composition that can push a lead, even if the Camelot Kings aren't behind as of now, and they aren't as a team, they are still ahead. Macro Farm, Greater Scorpions, all going their way. But if Leviathans can start looking towards these objectives, and shortly, I believe they will, this lead could start to build up.
Nice grouping now on the left, but meanwhile, Variety in a lot of trouble, uses that ultimate, not quite able to get away, but surely just an absurd amount of mobility from the King Arthur. Is going to get hit by Panatom's ultimate here. The shred is good, but Captain Twig with a nice stun is going to get stunned himself, though. Has to jump over the wall, but Camelot Kings are more than safe in this situation. Panatom and Yarkor will use this advantage to grab themselves a blue buff, but Captain Twig gets blinked onto, forced to use Destruction. Should be able to get out just fine.
Panatom on the tray, stash is good, a phenomenal stun from Twig, and he's turned it around! First blood bounty over to the Camelot Kings, as well as Kali's passive. Twig just saying, you can't walk into my tower, not for free. Panatom just one auto attack away, and one auto attack too far.
You have to pay attention to the incense. So often it's looked over in Kali's kit, but that stun can do exactly that. And we talked about Twig being okay playing from behind. Panatom gifts him, and he knows he is the target in that situation. And he gifts Captain Twig not only first blood bounty, but on top of that, you have the target bounty as well.
Yeah, Panatom certainly throwing a bit of his lead there. Captain Twig has equalized those levels and even slightly put himself in favor. As we get a look back, it's a great initiation. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel on a target that does not have beads. Leap not up for about a second here, but Death Immunity no good. And eventually it's the turnaround. That's just mini-map play from Captain Twig, realizing that Panatom's hot on his heels, and it's a great turnaround.
Absolutely, it is. And it's also just playing around those audio cues, you know. Clearly, Twig hears the double dash from the Nemesis, able to pop that incense without even really looking, and just plays the tower. Genetics could be getting looked at here, but that heal field's going to keep him just fine for now. Though Shinto still looking to get aggressive. Up into the sky goes BMT. That's going to start off the aggression, but Twig gets axed in the face, and I think that's going to call it.
Yeah, but I like the idea from the Leviathans to continually try and put pressure onto this red buff. You can't be dissuaded by one drop on the right-hand side.
Wrong you here, trying to put some pressure on BMT. The ultimate from Nemesis already coming through, and BMT has no beads available to him. He's going to get flung back into a flurry of damage, and that is going to be the first kill in favor of Leviathans. What a beautiful engagement there from Shinto to pull back the mid laner.
Yeah, that's just great play, man. Rongyu has been all over the map as well, just creating opportunities for his team. And the Leviathans are not concerned with the 9-5 changes to these towers. They are very willing to play within these structures. I mean, we saw it on the Tier 2. Panatom only 3 shots, I believe. Essentially, 100-0 is this Nemesis. Now Rongyu getting involved inside of the Tier 1 tower. And the Camelot Kings, they're using it as bastions of safety. Not exactly the safest place for him. But with all that said, Gold still favoring the Chaos team. Experience largely still favoring the Chaos team as well. So even with the Leviathans finding these small opportunities on the map, getting a kill in return, continually looking towards this red buff invade, it's the Camelot Kings who are time and time again putting themselves in the lead.
And you got to put that down to Twig. I mean, Kali gets so much extra gold from these kills in general, especially the ones onto her target. Combine that with First Blood gold, you're looking at basically a 3,000, and I do wonder if we can have a look at the chart again, because I would expect, yeah, that huge drop down at about 7 minutes and 47, that's First Blood right there, and it's just such a difference.
Yeah, about 600 gold separating these junglers, but Soul Lane, the largest disparity, variety, nearly an entire 1,000 gold up on Yarkor as of now. And Yarkor needs that gold. He needs every bit of farm he can get as he moves in towards his breastplate of Valor. That's where that survivability is going to lie for Yarkor on this Baron Samedi. So, opportunity over to the Camelot Kings to try and shut him down while that Warlock staff is still sub 50 stacks, while it's still just a silver breastplate. You're not quite fully double dipping on the physical defense just yet. Captain Twig and Variety both playing physical characters. So I think the Camelot Kings, if they so choose, can look to put pressure back onto Yarkor again and potentially start looking at this Pyromancer.
Especially now that Captain Twig has that kin size available. Did go first, basically first item. We're discounting the Golden Blade. Actually, hold that thought. Zapman getting aggressive on the left-hand side. Netroid makes good use of that dash. He's going to be just fine, but Captain Twig, though, could alternatively be in some trouble. Wrong you and Panatom looking to make some space around this Gold Fury. They want to create a veil around this objective, and Netroid is definitely the next target being looked at. Into the wall he goes, trying to buy himself some time. Does go up into the ultimate, but not quite fast enough. Panatom takes credit for that kill while the Kings get the Pyromancer.
Pyromancer dropped low, but presence from Yarkor enough to dissuade them. The Camelot Kings go for the age-old classic. Put pressure on one side of the map, we'll go elsewhere. This time the Leviathans, privy to it, are going to find their pick and look towards the Gold Fury. Pyromancer, no longer a thought for the Camelot Kings, and the Leviathans find themselves a massive win on the map. But because of how the Camelot Kings have approached the early game and establishing such a large lead in just macro farm, even this large swing favoring the Leviathans, 1-for-0 trade into an objective, only just evens out the match.
But it's such a shame from the Camelot Kings that I like the presence of mind to try and go for the Pyromancer, but they have to commit one way or another. They surely know that the Leviathans are going to use that opportunity to open up the left side of the map. They already got a kill onto the Hunter. The Gold Fury is essentially assured. I think I would have preferred to have seen the Camelot Kings try and fight for that Pyromancer a little bit more.
Well, if they take the fight, it's just that. It is an engagement. Shinto nearby, Yarkor nearby as well. You're not really looking at a coin toss with this draft. The Camelot Kings are not so favored in confirmation that they're willing to actually drop the Pyromancer. And when you look at chase potential, they didn't exactly have that either. Shinto playing from behind a wall, as is Yarkor. I think the Kings were essentially checkmated on map state, just in that small micro interaction. I don't think they can engage, and I'm not certain that I love their odds in a coin toss on the Pyromancer. The Leviathans just play the map well, find their pick, and get a free objective. Had Shinto rotated to the Gold Fury to help with that burn, then the Camelot Kings probably in a little bit better position to try and force out a fight on the right-hand side, but not the case this time around.
Wrong, you're going to start putting some pressure onto Genetics here already. Just pure control of the map is what Leviathans are going for. Potentially looking for some more ward coverage over here to the right-hand side, as the groupings from mid 3 are going to look over towards this Pyromancer. Twig getting a little bit of damage onto Rongyu, just keeping him chained inside the puddle for a while. Variety is going to get hit out by Panatom's ultimate, and the Shred is coming in hot and fast. Yakor taking a fair amount of damage from the FG as well. Rongyu could be in trouble, and that's going to be the first kill here for Captain Twig. Yakor still making his way out along the back. Genetics takes a full frontal from the rest of the Leviathans, but he's going to be just fine. The healing from Terra still able to keep him nice and healthy. Meanwhile, the Pyromancer is getting shredded. Variety still looking to create space, but the damage is going to be too much. Shinto picks up that one, and Zapman's dashing in.
Zapman ults forward. He's got the team at his heels. There's a blink in from Panatom.
Shred and tear until it is done. BMT looking to try and get out, but it's going to be Panatom the first one to fall, and Twig finds a third. Shinto could be the fourth one here for Captain Twig, jumping over the wall. It's going to eat the axe, but I'm not sure Shinto has enough space to work with here. Twig is so fast that speed buff may just be able to find it, and there's the incense to find the triple kill.
Big man Tings picks up Yakor on the tail end, and the Leviathans choose that engagement. You've already shut down Variety, sure, so you like your odds in the numbers situation, but considering the Kings had already taken the Pyromancer, the Leviathans just over-chase. Panatom steps too far forward, has to do so, has to blink and dash in just to keep up with Zapman. If it doesn't happen to Panatom, it immediately happens to Zap instead. But I think just an ill-thought-out engagement from the Leviathans. What are you fighting over there? Even if you take the fight handily, I'm not sure you're in a position where Fire Giant is necessarily an option. Gold Fury hasn't respawned just yet. Pyromancer was just eviscerated. And the Camelot Kings realizing that, okay, sure, we're at a numbers disadvantage. We just use a lot of our abilities to confirm the objective itself. But Zapman just ulted at us, and that means he hasn't got it to retreat. Instant turnaround from the Kings, and great play. But what we've seen time and time again in the initial team fight is this initiation from Yakor has been completely limited by the guy on your screen right now. Variety just has so many options, mobility-wise, to deal with the life of the party ultimate, that if Yakor is using it on this King Arthur, Yakor may as well just not be using it, because it's only applying that damage over time, that slight 30 to 40 damage tick. You're not finding the stun, and Variety's able to reposition himself without even having to use his ultimate. It's just auto attack into third ability, auto attack into second ability, and that's all it really is going to take away from this King Arthur. I think if Yakor wants to find value from that ultimate, he's got to hold it until a little bit later into the fight.
He's got to be looking towards Tings, he's got to be looking towards Netroid. Even Twig, a decent option there if Destruction isn't on the board. But you're absolutely right, Mifflin. Variety cannot continue to be the target. Shinto getting looked at. Captain Twig gonna stun and jump away. I guess fearing the rotation in from Panatom, and that's gonna be just fine. They don't need to commit too heavily to Shinto. I don't believe any relics were used, so gonna be just fine on that. But Twig at the moment, Mifflin sitting 5-0-1, 2 levels above Panatom, and this is not the position you want to be in up against Akali. 5-0-1, is such a strong slash line to have on this late game assassin.
And speaking of Twig, look at his build. Tier 2 charged bow, immediately into the short bow right afterward. That is a massive infusion of attack speed for the gold spent. And when you get attack speed, you have to evaluate in-hand procced effects. You know, not much better you could proc than a kin size. So Captain Twig absolutely shredding as of right now. The only fury is Zapman walks up.
Nice stun there from Captain Twig to peel away the Hunter. Zapman doesn't have the opportunity to try and steal away the Fury this time around. The Camelot Kings pull an extra objective under their belt, and just take a look at that chart, ladies and gentlemen. We've, in the last 5 minutes, seen about 1,000 gold per minute from the Camelot Kings.
But 4,000 some odd gold at the 18-minute mark, not massively impactful in a vacuum. But considering the scaling potential of this Camelot Kings draft, you'd really think this lead would come a little bit later into the game, or even be inverse. The Leviathans should be the initiators, the aggressors at this portion. And it's not for lack of trying. The Leviathans are still looking to invade that red buff. They're still looking to start off these objectives. But the Camelot Kings, with this counter punch style, have been able to slow down the Leviathans and instead put the ball in their court, so to speak, as Captain Twig locks eyes with both Rongyu and Yarkor. Thought maybe we'd see a bit more of a commitment, but instead, a reset back to neutral. Not much to fight over now, but a minute until that Pyromancer comes back.
Genetics gets stunned out of his dash, potentially a little bit worried there, but Panatom not really wanting to commit his ultimate just yet. But 4 people now rotating from both teams into the mid lane. Leviathans have to deal with this Trebuchet before they can try and commit to anything. The Camelot Kings let it go for free. They don't want to necessarily put too much pressure with that Trebuchet, and that's fine for now. There's nothing really on the map that they need to get aggressive over. Still a couple seconds left on the Pyromancer, but Panatom takes a huge amount of damage, forced to beads.
Netroid uses his ultimate during that exchange, goes over towards the left side of the map, I believe, takes out the tier 1 tower. This creates some space and gives vision to the Camelot Kings, realizing that Zapman is nowhere nearby. The Kings will take the tier 1 in mid as well, and start to slowly work their way through the map. Greater Scorpion, the hallmark of the Camelot Kings, will go their way, and now the Pyromancer, largest POI. Can the Leviathans defend? Absolutely not, just not in range. The Camelot Kings just accumulating such a lead as we start to approach that portion of the game where Fire Giant becomes a feasible option. I think the Leviathans, if they continue to let things go at the pace that they have, the Camelot Kings will be so far ahead. By the time you have to defend an objective, once it's the Fire Giant, a game-changing objective, the Leviathans will be so far down that it's just nearly impossible to work your way into this backline. I mean, even looking at how this composition from the Camelot Kings has been built, Captain Twig is now a frontliner. He's an initiator for his team. Variety, the exact same. Genetics, the exact same. So your backline dive for the Leviathans can really only look towards Netroid and Big Man Tings, and because Netroid is playing Chernobog, he is likely joining the front line more often than not. So it's all up to the Leviathans and whether or not their dive is successful onto Big Man Tings. Here's the thing about Big Man Tings. I'm not sure that he's been forced to use his ultimate defensively even once in the last 20 minutes, and I couldn't tell you with absolute certainty outside of one circumstance where Rongyu goes into the tower, I believe it was at the 6-minute mark, with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, where Big Man Tings has had to use his beats. I think other than that one isolated experience, Big Man Tings has gone largely uncontested. 5 affected kills and only 1 death.
And I think that comes from a lack of dive from this Leviathans comp. I mean, realistically, you've got Panatom who's aggressing onto the backline, and that's about it. Shinto can't really get back there unless he really goes in. We've seen what happens when Zap tries to aggress onto the backline. Disastrous. And Yarkor doesn't necessarily have the mobility to harass the backline either. So in reality, BMT is in such a safe position, as is Netroid, especially if Genetics is anywhere nearby, because as you said, Variety and Twig at the moment are more than happy to play forward and allow Genetics to sit in the back and peel for what little dive that Leviathans have.
But the Leviathans can try and shred frontline as well. A pull in from Yarkor, followed up by an ultimate from this Nemesis, will remove enough defenses from anybody on the Camelot Kings that they should like their odds.
Zapman in some trouble, gets caught out by 2, but I think he's been able to make his way out. Scratch that. Still taking a fair amount of damage, but no one wants to fully commit onto him, unlike Panatom, who's going to be the first person down in this engagement. And now Mifflin, Leviathans with 2 HP bars below half, and 1 member in the grayscale. Camelot Kings should be able to crack open this FG.
Yarkor and Rongyu on the rotation in. Variety spots him out. Fire Giant dropped. It's about the fight.
Yarkor already at half HP. Meanwhile, Rongyu able to root out 4 people there, but at what cost? His health is falling rapidly. Zapman forced to ult away, and Yarkor finally manages to pull someone in, but it's not someone he wants to have to deal with. Captain Twig right up in the face of the solo laner. He's going to take that kill for himself. Mifflin, 22 minutes in, Fire Giant should be free.
The Camelot Kings have just got such a great divide and conquer approach to this match so far. That initial fight where Panatom gets picked out, it's a fight that starts around the left-hand side. Twig lines up against Shinto, forces the Leviathans to rotate in, stack up. And, well, a 4-man rotation for the Leviathans will obviously leave 1 on their own, and the Camelot Kings punish it very, very well. The Kings are playing with their lead as they should, essentially throwing their weight around saying, hey, we're just stronger. Each individual member that we've got is stronger than anything that you can match it with. A 1v1 between Twig and Panatom is going to go Twig's way. Same with Variety against his opposition all the way down the board. So the Camelot Kings are making use of that to control the rotations of the Leviathans, artificially manufacturing circumstances where it's 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 2 or even 1v1s, which will still favor the Kings.
That man could be in trouble. Genetics is here with the harassment, trying to just slow him down for now. Look at the positioning from Twig, looking to separate Zapman from the tower, and in combination with BMT, Twig is unstoppable. The left tier 2 is going to fall down, and the Camelot Kings looking to crack open the Titan room with the left Phoenix.
Yeah, you've got a Nuwa, so you've got no reason to slow down. Start to work your way forward. Those clay minions can tank up for you. No defense from the Leviathans, and I tend to agree. In a 5 versus 4, you're going to favorite the team with the Fire Giant and the lead. So what do the Leviathans do on the map? The best they can, which is take out a tier 1 in mid, a tier 1 in right, potentially some tier 2s, expose some win conditions.
Netrioid, though, using that ultimate to come forward. Shinto gonna have to use some fancy footwork here. Look at the damage that Netrioid is able to put out. One more auto should do it, and Shinto falls down.
Yeah, Netrioid just landing way too many crits there. I think he maybe only lands 1 non-crit onto Shinto, who has just got to be upset with the pacing of that one. Was not allowed to turn around the fight, and even had he connected an axe on a Netrioid, Netrioid's got beads and will win the boxing match. So, unfortunate circumstance for Shinto. Will desync his death for 40 seconds. The Camelot Kings can continue their onslaught.
And they are going to do just that. The tier 2 tower should be next here. And with Shinto on a 30-second cooldown, I think the Camelot Kings have a fair amount of rain to come into this mid lane here. 4 members. Everyone but the support sitting at level 20 here. They've got the clay minions to open up some of that portal, and Variety coming in here to the left-hand side, putting Panatom up into the sky, but he's taking a lot of damage in return. The shred is good, but meanwhile, Yakor under tower looking to pull somebody in. Disengage from Camelot Kings is good for now, though, but the Phoenix falls to half.
Still a minute to play with on this Fire Giant, but the Camelot Kings are taking a slower approach. Yakor, Panatom, and Rongyu all expend their ultimates. You'd think the Camelot Kings would have the opportunity to keep up this aggression, but the respawn of Shinto, enough to dissuade them from continuing it. And the Camelot Kings never a team to leave it to a risky play. Instead, fall back towards the Pyromancer and continue the fight. Yakor's ultimate has just gone without value so far this game. Life of the Party has just not been a great initiation tool. Twig able to jump out of it. Again, Variety just playing goaltender. And I like how Variety's been approaching the ultimate again. It's not that he's always using the ultimate to immune it. Instead, Variety that time around decides, okay, I'll stick a little bit closer. I'll stay in the suction range just in case any of my teammates are going to get pulled in. And then you better believe, had Twig not had the leap available or Genetics or Netroid was a target there, Variety would have likely just taken the option of going in himself and then utilizing all that HP 5 from Fire Giant as well as the Stone of Gaia to resustain it. Very difficult to shut down this King Arthur in even idyllic circumstances, which certainly that was not for the Leviathans. Camelot Kings now 10,000 gold in the lead, 1 minute out from the Fire Giant respawning, but the Leviathans have got an okay map state. As long as Zapman can push out 1 or 2 more waves before this Fire Giant respawns, and the Leviathans don't lose another Phoenix, I think the Order side should be able to put up a defense in neutral territory.
Potentially, but the Camelot Kings are going hard here on the right-hand side. Zapman only able to push out 1 more wave, so gonna have to deal with that pressure on the left-hand side. But Camelot Kings, they see Zap flying in, and they're deciding we don't necessarily want to take this 5v5 just yet. Fire Giant not around the waist of the red team just for now. Going to be respawning in about 30 seconds. And I'm going to call it now, Mifflin. This is probably going to be an enhanced Fire Giant by the time either of these two teams is able to pick it up.
Who's to say? 30 seconds on the respawn, so 2.5 minutes to drop it. The Camelot Kings have got a whole lot of space to play with. It depends on how present the Leviathans are on this defense. I'm thinking somebody from the Leviathans will likely head over towards left and try and contend with those fire minion waves. If nobody does, the Camelot Kings could very well just extend this team fight to the point where the Fire Giant is enhanced and wait for these fire minion waves to start working towards the Phoenix that is just now starting to respawn for the Leviathans. Looking at positioning on map, seems like the Leviathans will not make this as an easy fight. So the Camelot Kings, all they have to do is move the goalposts. Extend this fight as long as possible until somebody from the Leviathans is forced to return to base, forced to defend that left side Phoenix, and the second somebody from the Camelot Kings notices anyone missing from the Leviathans. That's the time to fight. That's the time to initiate. As of now, nobody going back just yet. Zapman going to be the first one.
Variety looking to put some pressure on Rongyou. I'm not sure if the Camelot Kings know that Zapman just banked.
They know.
But if they do, they clearly do now because he shows up on that left-hand Phoenix. This is a Jingwei though, so not the longest in terms of getting back, but Variety blinking in is going to get hit by that Divine Retribution. Protections have been shredded, but so has the Fire Giant. Down it falls, and the Camelot Kings with a huge pressure play. Captain Twig looking to get a kill onto Yako, not quite able to finish off that one, but is able to make it out for himself. Yako falls down, Panatom falls down, 2 members left standing on the Leviathans, and with one Phoenix about to get finished off by Fire Waves, Mifflin, the Camelot Kings are in a very good position to end.
Man, I love that play from the Camelot Kings. They don't even wait it out. Zapman up against Twig in the 1v1 will win this time around. No destruction available to the Kali. Gotta think Twig could have just gone with his team, but at the end of the day, what difference is it going to make? If Variety can stop Zapman's back, 3 versus 1, I like their odds.
Potentially, but it looks like Zap is going to escape the ever-knowing eye of Variety. He's going to get back to base
Well, the
just
opposite.
fine. Well, yeah, I guess so. The not-knowing eye, I think, has less of a ring to it. So we'll see Zapman fly back over here towards the left-hand side and save that Phoenix. Unfortunately for the Camelot Kings, that Fire Wave wasn't quite able to finish off the bird. And with that 1v1, Mifflin, Zapman, I think, has single-handedly put the Leviathans back into a position where they have some more breathing room.
They do. Left side Phoenix respawned, right side Phoenix down. So if you're going to make that trade, that favors the Leviathans as well. Better map state for the reigning world champions. Primal Fury still going to go over to the Camelot Kings, so subsequent Fire Giants should go down with relative ease. That said, Captain Twig dies pretty early into the Fire Giant cycle, so should be able to rejoin his team and continue the siege attempts. 15, 16,000 gold nearly for the Camelot Kings. Fire Giant on 4 members. I think this is an opportunity still for the Camelot Kings to try and put some pressure on that left-hand wave. Left side Phoenix is about as healthy as it's going to get, so the Leviathans will likely either allow the left side Phoenix to just go down and instead try their best, all eggs in the mid lane basket, or the Leviathans will try and take a fight outside of Phoenix range. Spearhead, best defense is a good offense, and keep the Camelot Kings at bay. So far, the initiation from the Leviathans has been a bit lacking. If it's not Rongyou going in first, it's nobody from the Leviathans connecting any impactful CC. And looking at the relic situation for the Camelot Kings, beads coming up for Twig, Variety still got that blink available and so much CC immunity. Big Man Tings only relic down for 30 seconds, but still a CC immunity in that ultimate. Going to be difficult for the Leviathans to force a fight. Could be that the Kings just wait out 20 or so more seconds to make sure all those relics are back up and just pressure out the entirety of the map.
Either way, the Kings in a decent spot here. Fire Giant still available for 2 members, at least for the next minute. So they got some time to play with for sure. 5 seconds left on those relics, so I think you're 100% right. Just waiting out Captain Twig. Looking to put some pressure on the jungle here. Picks up that speed buff and is going to be looking for this 3-1 split. But absolutely, well pointed out, Mifflin. The right lane has got Fire Waves pouring through. Someone from the Leviathans is going to have to deal with that, and there are the pings right now. Someone from the Leviathans has to know. They've got to start looking forward. Variety, the first one to blink in, catches Zapman. They're on the ground. Half HP already on the Hunter. Still trying to go aggressive. But Yako now trying to pull somebody in. It will be Genetics is the target. But half HP already on some of the Leviathans. And the Phoenix is gone.
Panatom forced to rotate over to the right-hand side to keep those fire minion waves at bay, so the Camelot Kings will take down the left side Phoenix. Only 20 seconds left on this Fire Giant power play. That's not a whole lot of time, but it only takes a couple of auto attacks to shut down a bird.
That's what they're looking to do here. BMT just out of range of that arrow shot, so he's going to be fine for now. Hamstring does not find any purchase, but 1 or 2 auto attacks there on that Phoenix were able to put a lot of damage on the board. The Kings now, though, Fire Giant just about to wear off, and there it goes. Looking to reset, grab the next FG, and try and push forward then. Variety will take some poke, but this team is perfectly fine waiting it out. They've still got this advantage, but I am worried because every passing moment, the Leviathans catch up just that little bit more.
Yeah, but you got to talk about map state, though. Sure, the Leviathans are closing gap as far as build is concerned. Everyone starting to approach level 20, but the Camelot Kings are not without power spikes ahead of them. Elixir Power now purchased for Captain Twig, so massive power infusion there. Enhanced Fire Giant, the topic of conversation, so whichever team picks that up will not have to contend with backdoor protections. And here's the thing about Kali, when she doesn't have backdoor protections to worry about, she wins 1v1s against Phoenixes. Destruction just does that.
Here it goes again, one more time, running back this 1v1. Captain Twig looking to get aggressive onto Zapman. There's the leap, forces out the airstrike, but does have the wraparound available. Zapman has to walk into the jungle, and he is going to find genetics.
Good beads.
Forces the beads, but here comes Captain Twig still. Hits him with the lash, and the damage from the bleed would be enough to pop that, but Zapman flies away. The Aegis is used, but Netrioid already half HP. Forced the dash into the wall, the damage coming through. Patatom, the first man down. Wrong you now could be the next target. Captain Twig gets pulled back into the coffin, but Yakor is not having fun at this party.
Captain Twig able to walk away with destruction, and the Camelot Kings find 2 for 0. Zapman may have survived, but at the cost of 2 of his allies. Panatom and Yakor pay for the sins of the team captain. Now the Camelot Kings can fall back to an enhanced Fire Giant with 0 concern of opposition from the Leviathans. 1 micro play on the left side of the map. Zapman trying to push out a couple of waves in an attempt to get over towards this enhanced Fire Giant in the future, is caught out by Captain Twig. And now the Camelot Kings, in a very dominant position, can essentially do no wrong. Enhanced Fire will go their way, which means that all these Phoenix Siege defenses we've seen from the Leviathans will have to work just a little bit harder. If the Camelot Kings are allowed into Phoenix range, they will take any of these birds with extreme ease.
There's only 3 people left here to try and shore up that right Phoenix. All 3 are going to back, and Panatom should be up in time to try and defend, but Mifflin, surely this right Phoenix falls just about instantly.
Stun no good from Genetics. Phoenix still alive. The Leviathan's keeping it interesting.
2 people pull back in, but the Phoenix is gone, and up into the sky goes BMT, looking to put the damage onto Shinto, and nearly falls down does the mid laner. Camelot Kings take the bird. They're gonna back up once again, still playing this super safe, and I think that's the word of the day for the Camelot Kings. This team really loves not leaving anything to chance. They know they have the time, the space, the map state to play with, and they're going to use and abuse it.
Yeah, Big Man Tings and Genetics both commit their ultimates in that team fight, so a 5-on-5 engagement, even with Enhanced Fire Giant to the Kings, is not so heavily favored to them that they'd like to have it inside the Phoenix room proper. So they will reset and play with all this time, about 3 minutes, on the Fire Giant buff. And the Camelot Kings have only got 2 birds to contend with. Left side Phoenix respawning now for the Leviathans. But the Leviathans do not love their odds in a base defense, and instead have set up in neutral territory.
The Oni Fury is taken down here. No contestant from the Camelot Kings, though. Rongu really getting aggressive, but he's taking a lot of damage in return. Genetics looking to take down the support, but Whirlwind of Rage and Steel is not going to be enough to save the life, and Captain Twig decimates Zapman in the process. Down falls the dual lane for the Leviathans, and Yakor, surely the next one to fall here should be a third for Captain Twig. Triple kill for the jungler from the Camelot Kings. Surely this won't be 5. Panatom caught backing, and Captain Twig and Variety looking to pincer up.
All they have to do is stop backs. The Camelot Kings do not need to win this fight. They're just buying time. There's already 3 in the base.
Jumping forward, Captain Twig looking for the quadra kill, or at this point probably the artificial quadra, but Captain Twig takes a lot of damage from Shinto. One more ability should do it. Blinking forward to Variety, looking to close that one out, and Panatom is gonna fall down while the rest of the team finishes the game.
I suppose Shinto at least holds on to his life this time, and that's all he holds on to. The Camelot Kings take game 1 in this best-of-3 series. I'm expecting adaptations galore. It was some slight mistakes from the Leviathans throughout the early game that throws the portion of the match where the Leviathans' composition should have thrived. We heard it from the desk. Rowe essentially saying, hey, look, I mean, this draft's going to be a little bit better earlier on. Not the case if you're 4,000 gold down at the 12-minute mark. The Camelot Kings with superior macro play create a situation where the Leviathans feel like they are forced to make pretty heavy-handed plays on the map, continually red buff invading, continually looking for these dives, because just by nature of the Camelot Kings' phenomenal farm on map, it was an early 2,000 gold lead to them. That is a lot of mental pressure to contend with, and well, when you're under mental pressure, you tend to make mistakes.
We'll see if that mental pressure can continue, or if Leviathans can pull it back to a game number 3 coming up.
I win? What did it win?
You win the respect.
You're telling me an alien wore this?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that was a good cut.
Messaging him to mute.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course, and I can probably watch a stream on the side.
Content's gonna look good.
Pretty good, pretty good.
Nights out under the sky, watching stars align. Days of making sweet honey, Melissa lemon balm. Nights as warm as your breath on my chest, so calm. Now, baby, let the summer breeze carry us away. Let the summer breeze carry us away. Baby, to a place where the sun always shines on to summer lovers. Just before you know it, the summer has gone. Halfway into life, you think you've seen it all, but I've never seen a smile like yours. How could any man alive not fall and let the forces of love take their course? Let the summer breeze carry us away. Let the summer breeze carry us away. Baby, to a place where the sun always shines on to summer lovers. Just before you know it, the summer has gone. Tell me love is autumn on its way. Yeah, yeah. Tell me love is summer here to stay.
Well, Slow and Steady wins the race here
That's right.
in game number 1. The Kings come in, they consistently win, and then they continue doing that for the duration of the game.
Yeah.
And maybe it takes a little bit, but they still get the dub at the end of the day. It looks really clean, although, again, you know, Ro, it took a little
Slow.
bit before they finally, I want to say, like, kick off the way that you would expect it. And a lot of it ended up being oriented around that Kali. A couple of really choice picks and some early fights
Yeah.
really do just set up the dominoes for the rest of the game.
Twig did get gifted a kill under that tier 2 tower early game, so that kind of set the momentum for him as well. So he gets a gold lead. He was already invading back camps when he didn't have a gold lead the previous game.
Yeah.
So now he's invading them even more aggressively and looking for kills as well. Panatom kind of busy doing his own thing. He was ganking Nitroid under tower as well. Meanwhile, Twig's still farming, and that big team fight comes around that Fire Giant. Here's that kill again as well, by the way. And I guess just good footwork by Twig to make the escape here, and you got to say it is greedy by Panatom to be under a tier 2 tower this patch at 7 minutes into the game.
Yeah, there's so many things, and you get the full heal. Like, it's like the combination of worst case scenario that could happen to you 7 minutes in, and then that kind of slowly but surely set up a whole tear of kills throughout the rest of the game. There was, I think, even a moment like at the very end, Twig like does finally, go down, get killed off by Zap. But at that point, it's so late. They already have the FG. They're already mostly dead anyway.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is at 14 minutes in this clip, and this isn't when Kings wanted to force anything. It was Leviathans forcing the fight on them, yet Kings still came out on top. But again, Twig, in all of these team fights, able to actually rotate onto either Panatom or the enemy backline and find these kills. He's absorbing Baron ults, and this wasn't the first one this game that he absorbed as well. So doing his job as a tank as well to set up for his team.
And just showcasing, I think, the maybe dichotomy. Baron last week popping off, winning games left and right. Baron this week 0-5-1 so far. Meanwhile, you get the 11-1-7. That's such a nuts KDA for Twig. And you had mentioned like this King Arthur, but like something that was working really well and I think helps shut down that Baron early on does come from the solo lane.
That's right. And I'm not sure if it was ever highlighted by the casters, but we saw King Arthur get 7-0 in those totems. That's like 1,000 gold swing almost over that Baron of it. Like just from King Arthur having that lane pressure, he didn't have to fight. He just had to not lose the lane. He'll clear faster than Baron. He can fight Baron because Baron really just can't fight him anyway. He can always spin away from that pull in. So he's able to get all of those totems, get that global gold for his team. And even when Leviathans were winning the early game, in the like around 10-minute mark, they got a gold fury. They were forcing fights. They were diving tier 2 towers. Whether that worked out or not doesn't matter. Leviathans were playing aggressive in the early game, but Camelot Kings were able to stay in the game, even stay in the lead at times when they didn't have pressure because of these totems, all thanks to the King Arthur. One of his assets is that he wins lane, he's able to get that farm for his team.
And you had mentioned it before the game, but you were talking about it like in an equal state, the Kings had an advantage early on. So if the Leviathans fight into them, the Kings will be able to kind of rely on their composition to overpower them. But if they entered like the same, 15-minute mid-game fight, like the Leviathans had a slightly earlier peak. Unfortunately, that earlier peak is even, not went behind. And so unfortunately, I think the Kings got their early control. They got a good grip on it. Now they're up 1-0. Levi's going to be first pick here in game number 2.
Kali
and immediately they ban away the Kali. It's answered with the Emoja, not necessarily too surprising on the one side, but admittedly when you go 11-1-7, you're kind of paying a target on your back.
You definitely deserve some respect after that game. He got 11 kills. Those were all deaths on the part of Leviathan, so they felt it firsthand, the effect of that Kali. And they banned away the Artemis as well. Another target ban. We saw that last game, I think, from memory. And then AMC, no thinking this time. Kings had to think about that pick a lot in the last ban phase, where they, I think, waited until third bans and banned away the AMC then. So this time, taking it away early, the bracket still open is what's different so far.
They just sit back and they're just like, you know what?
Take away that comp.
We beat Jingwei twice. Pick her.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. We have no problems with it. It's the AMC, the Cabrakan, as you had mentioned, is the one that ends up coming through. So do the Leviathans go back to this Jingwei after seeing the Titans lose with it against the Kings, after losing it with it themselves? And the answer is going to be yes. So they don't seem to think that this was the problem.
I can't imagine they think that's the problem. I think it's more what the Kings had, and that's why they've banned away the Kali. That's why they've banned away Nuwa. Those are two gods that Kings have won 2 games with now just today as well. So respecting that, banning away those gods, and then sticking to your guns of what they think they're good at, namely the Jingwei right now, for Zapman, that's smart in my opinion.
Now you get a whole lot more that was open before. The Artemis is similar from game 1 to game 2 that the Levi's banned, but Ymir and Khepri were up there on that list, and either of them exists on the board
That's
right
the thing.
now.
They put a lot of bans towards Kings, a lot of bans towards Genetics in particular, and he still picks the Terra, something he's mightily comfortable on and still had a huge impact on. And look, King Arthur, we're talking about impact. We talked about the gold lead that he gave his team, or the gold, he made up for a gold deficit, I should say. So why not just go back to it, stick to what's working for you? Leviathans are the ones that have to switch something up now.
Last time around, it was King Arthur Chernobog.
Yep,
And they're going to just keep it the same, continue on that route. It was Terra for their top 3. I guess we'll see in a little bit if the Kings go back that far to run it back. But they have a whole field of supports and Guardians to try and pick up. I guess a lot depends right here. It was Xingqian Uller for the Leviathans. And Jingwei, Xingqian Uller. Like, not just have they beat the Jingwei each time, they beat those 3 gods so far twice today if you're the Kings.
So the pressure is on. Leviathans have already picked this comp twice. They already thought, I guess we can see that they really value it. Now they've lost with it once as well. So they still value it. Are they shaking in their boots now? They want to pick their pocket picks. How deep do these god pools go? How creative can they get? Or do they just say, you know what? We still believe we were right. We just lost to Kali and Nuwa. We've banned those away. Let's go back to our picks and try it again. Run it back.
Now, we've seen, and I'm looking through it, but I'm pretty sure almost everything except for one Nemesis pick, every other jungle lock-in today has been like at the very bottom, like the last pick for the team. Is it worth trying to pick your jungler up here in the top 3?
It could be. I feel like there's a decent amount of options. Cleaner is a decent option as well in the jungle.
I forgot about Cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, great in the solo lane. If he's talking about, well, I'm talking about how he didn't have pressure last game and he was losing that gold, losing that totem. Now he can actually go hand-to-hand with King Arthur.
Well, they trade out Xing Shin here for the Uller. Or not for the Uller, for the cleanup. They keep the Uller.
Lose the
And
Xing
so
Shin.
otherwise, yeah, trading things up. And like you said, if it's solo lane, then awesome, you got a little bit of pressure. If it's the jungler, then cool. What you've done is make your draft very ambiguous, I guess, at the top. But you're missing out on a little bit of support power. And the Kings make up for that. Last time it was Terra, before Khepri and Ymir were banned. Khepri gets locked in. I'm sure somewhere in the studio, Avrin's doing a little happy dance. And I can't imagine, look, if
Genetics is
you're
too.
going late game comps, and you get a comp that has a Khepri on it, and he just I'm frustrated for the Leviathans already.
Yeah, especially when it's a King Arthur that's going to be in front of you, just poking you all the time, and you don't want to blow him up because there's a Khepri on the team as well. So it makes it even more annoying. And I think a good response the Khepri is to Cleaner, for example, who's diving your backline a lot of the time and trying to blow up one of your carries. So Khepri, a perfect god to compete for that. One thing we're not seeing, we're missing that Xing Chen that was with the Jingwei and the Uller in the last couple games. So they're missing a lot of utility on that side now as well. And Cleaner, a god to me that doesn't synergize very well with hunters on your team. That's very split up from what you want to do. Granted, they do have objective DPS in common, but Cleaner not going to give hunters too much other than pressure.
Well, Ymir banned out now by the Kings as they try to control Wrong Yu on the other side. Someone you had mentioned, and I'm going to preempt this with I don't expect to see it, but someone you had mentioned earlier was a little bit of conversation around the Horus, something that we've seen Wrong Yu specifically play. But with the changes specifically thrown at Warriors right now, with that itemization, you had mentioned that Horus admittedly plays a lot more like a Guardian, has some early game scaling that fits the Warrior, but can he fit right now in the dual lane meta?
I think he can, but I don't think he can fit this comp just because there is so much physical damage already. So that might be a big reason we're not seeing him in support often as well, is because we're seeing a lot of double hunters or just a lot of hunters in general. We're seeing one in solo lane, for example. So you start to lose the ability to pick these physical supports. I think we saw Inbound, he played Erlang support, so that was one of them that we did see. And that was a pretty snowbally game, so you still have that option. But right now, if Leviathans or Kings, for example, are forcing a game to scale into the late game, then you need to even out your magical and physical damage. Otherwise, you're just going to lose in the itemization battle.
Well, Xing Shin joins the Ymir and the bans from the King. Neath on the other side. And last time around, it was Neath Izanami that they were trying to control in mid lane. And you had said, just calling shot outs, respecting the matchup for Uller.
Yeah.
And it's a
Zeus this time, however. So I guess, no Nuwa, no Zeus. I'm not sure what he goes to next. Maybe it is the Izanami. Maybe they have information we don't.
Either the Izanami. I mean, when I think of what exactly we could see big man play, the list kind of goes on and
deep.
on and on. I immediately want to start rattling off mages that we haven't seen at all
forever.
over the last couple of weeks, just because for some reason he'll play him. I mean, hell, Discordia seems to be on that list.
Yeah.
I could see the Discordia, the Hera, the insert another god here. He just plays different things, and we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to figure out what it is. Nemesis locked in for the jungle for the Kings, and this feels a little different. So far we've seen, you had highlighted this earlier, 2 games on Kali for Twig.
Yes.
2 big performances. The second one maybe a lot bigger than the first, but still big performances for him. Nemesis doesn't quite do the same thing as Akali does.
No, but you add a Khepri with the Nemesis, then equally hard to kill is what Akali is. So both of them are getting their life saved by either the Kali ultimate or the Nemesis having a Khepri ultimate. So he can kind of play that same style as long as Genetics is around. He'll clear fast again. He kind of does the same job in terms of, just picking a target and trying to execute them. But Nemesis uses that ult instead of Kali using that stun combo as well. So as long as he's confident that Genetics is around, or a Chernobog is flying in, or a King Arthur is fighting with him, we can see him do much the same job as what he did on Kali.
Hey, do I have any friends here? Cool, let's go.
Let's fight, yeah.
I have to imagine that they'll be, well, at least in communication about that kind of thing. I won't see Twig get too aggressive
Ares.
without anybody. Ares and the Mercury. So Mercury is one that's interesting. Both of the initial games that we saw today had a Mercury ban in them. But this set, he's been avoided so far. Nobody's touched him, despite the fact that it felt like last week he was getting banned a good bit.
He was.
And, well, when it comes down to late game hyper carries that use crit and attack speed well,
That's Mercury.
Mercury kind of hits the right mark.
I almost have no doubt we'll see him tomorrow, for example, when J Dragons play, because Sam loves that god. But we've seen him a lot the last week as well, so he certainly fits the meta as well. He will kind of sometimes get outboxed by Nemesis. He does have to put up with that Khepri ultimate, so it's going to be difficult to find, you know, a good ultimate, for example, or a good opportunity to go on the backline. But if Cleaner can make that space and split the Kings up, then maybe Mercury can find an ultimate through.
Well, the question has been... Actually, okay, it is the cleanest solo. It took me a second. I had to like hit the reset button on my brain to figure that one out. The question was going to be mid. And look, I was willing to list a whole ton of gods that Tings has played. And
that wasn't on my list.
This was, I mean, it would have been there if we had kept going after a while, but probably like number 10, 11, 12. You get halfway through the mages. I mean, you'll go back to what, season 7 he was playing this a lot?
He was.
Yeah. On ping. This is going to be wildly different from what I expect we experienced then, but not what I expected. I did not prep my notes for a Kukulkan.
No, I mean, look, he's bringing his own style, right? He's got objective DPS. He's got probably the best secure in the game, if not, you know, top 5. And he can kind of play the same style as what Nuwa played, where you just sit back and play safe and just throw out your team fight damaging abilities. So that's one thing this double hunter team comp on Leviathans will struggle with. When it gets to team fights, you really want a mage to poke the enemy team. Ula can do that a little bit, but it's still double physical damage, so it's easy to itemize for. Whereas if there's magical damage and a Soul Eater and stuff like that coming out of Kukulkan, then you can get a lot more poke on the enemy team. So I'm expecting a big long ultimates for maybe some like ultimates just connecting on the tip on the enemy backline from Kukulkan, or he's just going to use them to secure objectives and sit under tower and farm just like a Nuwa would.
Well, it's a Kings game, so we can ignore the first 15 minutes and no any discussion about whether or not you can get an early game
But Leviathans
lead.
want to fight, so they might force it.
Something. I mean, honestly, it feels like it might be devastating to them. Again, like if they try to take a fight early on, it feels like that favors the Kings here. You've got... I see good objective secure. I see good team fight play. I see a Khepri that makes things a little annoying. Like, you've got a Mercury, you've got some good carry potential for the Leviathans, but it feels like the Kings have kind of all their bases covered.
Yeah, so far it looks like Leviathans have doubled down and said, you know, what we did last game and what we've done the game to start today off was what we wanted to continue doing. We want to press the go button on these objectives as soon as we can. We just need, you know, a couple crit items online for Jingwei, a couple crit items for Mercury, and then let's force these objectives. Kings say, you know what, we're going to team fight no matter what. We will drag out the game to get to that point, so we have the stronger team fight composition, and that's what they've built this game.
Well, the Kings are up 1-0. Let's see if they can advance with just 2 games here in the best of 3, or the Leviathans tie things up in game number 2.
Our first potential at one team to qualify through to Saturday's games. Group 6 is the aim. The Camelot Kings are only 1 game away. And with some changes, and once again, a relatively spicy pick, you've got the Kukulkan coming through.
Spicy.
Here. I would say spicy.
That's anti-spice, my guy. That's sugar.
It's interesting.
Yeah, he's gonna sit in his tower.
Sugar is anti-spice.
Look, man, I didn't go to culinary school. Leave me alone. Let me do my thing.
Okay, all right. Sorry, you go.
Like, here's the thing about Big Man Tings and maybe Kukulkan at large. He's gonna sit in his tower. He's gonna walk up. He's gonna slither up, and he's going to toss a tornado out, and he's gonna go back to his tower. I'm expecting a whole lot of that for 10, 15, maybe minutes. As a jungler, and this is a jungler's perspective, Kukulkan is one of the most miserable mid laners to ever have to be forced to play with, because there's not a whole lot of playmaking potential until level 5. And then the whole of your playmaking potential is, did Spear of the Nine Winds connect? If yes, fight's good. If no, I don't have a mid laner in this engagement. So I'm expecting Captain Twig in particular to probably play anywhere else on the map. Could look towards the Soul lane, could look towards the Dual lane. Plenty of slightly immobile, squishy targets for the Camelot Kings to try and exploit throughout the early portions. Just do not believe we will see a whole lot of fighting in mid.
Fair enough. Wrong, you potentially a decent target for Captain Twig in the early game. A lot of protections he can shred away with that ultimate. And also, Terra doesn't have the most mobility, doesn't obviously have no mobility, still has a fairly decent dash, especially if able to get that double dash off. Now, let's talk about this right-hand side, Mifflin. The clear, obviously, something that we've been seeing a lot of this last week coming up into today. The King Arthur, not so much. So how does this matchup play?
Well, Variety's not allowed to spin top just about ever. The silence from Yarkor is a lesser channel. It doesn't take as long to fully channel that ability. Will also win out on damage trades. So I'm expecting Variety to hit an inflection point around level 6, maybe level 7, as he starts to get first, second item finished, where this King Arthur can be allowed to play a little bit more aggressive, will have the sustain to deal with Yarkor. Yarkor, on the other hand, likely will move in towards Soul Eater for first slot. So once Kleena takes over to level 5, level 6, level 7, it's more so, hey, when can I proxy these waves? Maybe I could start looking to steal away some of these jungle camps, slow down Captain Twig. That should be the entirety of Yarkor's game plan, is get pressure and play with it.
Variety gonna get scooped up by Panatom, and unless Captain Twig can make it down here in time, should be first blood in favor of the Kings, and it will be just that. Twig not able to find anything this time around. Panatom, maybe, if he had the dash back up there, maybe gets a second onto Twig, but he has to play super carefully, he being Twig. But Variety already has used the teleport back, trying to block up Panatom's dash. There's the double dash from Captain Twig, and Panatom is going to be forced away.
Really good patience for Panatom there. Captain Twig with both of those dashes was trying to play around the dasher from Panatom. If Mercury gets caught out, Mercury loses his life there every single time. So Panatom says, well, the only way I die is if I use my dash and I mistakenly get caught. So if I just hold on to it and continue to walk, an opportunity will arise. Or potentially I could just continue to walk and Captain Twig will have no opportunity to chase out until that slice and dice comes back up. So great patience from the Mercury, who tries his best to steal away that blue buff, but an early rotation from Variety is able to confirm it. That said, they hit pay dirt, first blood over to the Leviathans, and a pretty sizable gold lead off the back of it as well.
Yeah, 1,000 gold is nothing to scoff at here. 3.5 minutes into the game. About 5 minutes earlier than we saw first blood last time around onto Captain Twig. Sorry, from Captain Twig, I think is the better operative this time around. Panatom gets it in his pocket, and Mercury, one of those characters again, just like the Kali, that you really do enjoy seeing that first blood bounty onto. Is going to help him finish off that Golden Blade a little bit sooner, which is going to massively accelerate how quickly Panatom can start farming these camps.
And it seems like Panatom's going to continue farming Yarkor's waves. Second rotation over. It takes a bit of a stacked wave, so Yarkor now falling behind despite Variety dying for first blood. Variety will take over to level 5 first. Panatom splitting perhaps just a little bit too much. But Yarkor's playing Kleena and will be able to finish up that Soul Eater pretty shortly, so Variety won't be able to throw around his weight too much in this lane. Both junglers opt for Golden Blade in the first slot, so both junglers will be farming the map pretty quickly. I'd argue Mercury will likely look towards crit in this second slot, especially with the pacing that Panatom has shown already, getting involved twice now in attempted ganks. Tells me that we could be looking potentially at either a Wind Demon if he wants additional efficacy in the ganks, if he wants to have more damage output, or even alternatively, a Rage in the second slot. So very interested to see where Panatom goes with his build and where he just goes in general. I feel like the Leviathans really are going to, I suppose, play around their jungler in the majority of these fights. You don't really love your odds in a standard 2v2 in the duo lane. The 1v1 will not come often. So that semi-global presence of this Mercury should be the difference maker.
Absolutely, and there's plenty of places that Panatom can go to get value. You know, BMT, sitting duck, essentially. If you can get
in his tower.
Well, yeah, if you can find a small window where you can get BMT out of his tower.
Yeah, the time it takes for him to walk from tower to tornado range of the wave.
All I'm saying is that if BMT is caught out of position, which is a non-0% chance of happening.
Chances are low.
Chances are low, but non-zero for sure. Panatom could find some kills onto BMT. Genetics, another really decent example. If they can keep that CC chain going, I think even more kills onto Variety could be in the future if they're able to abuse his mobility with Yarkor's damage in the same way they just were.
Stone Gaia finished up for Variety, so anytime Panatom does get involved in this lane, if he uses that third ability, the dash, will proc the passive of Stone Gaia and make Variety that much more difficult to shut down. Yarkor has already finished up the Soul Eater though, so a little bit of penetration with the cooldown available for the Kleena in lane, but I think Panatom will likely start to look elsewhere now that Sonagaya has been finished for Variety. Just not really the greatest kill potential without using that dash, and when you do use it, the healing in 9-5 in conjunction with the defense changes would really just make it super hard to kill this King Arthur.
Yakor and Variety just throwing some slaps about for now. Panatom is going to proc this ward here, so Variety isn't going to get too aggressive. Netroid, though, gets some difficulties. Goes straight up and down. Doesn't quite find the wall, but Zapman not quite having the damage output just yet to finish up on that kill. Big ultimate, though, expended from Netroid already.
Yeah, but Netroid's got some added safety nets. He can have Genetics stay pretty close by in the lane. Scarab's Blessing, giving you a second lease on life, maintains the bead, so we'll be able to avoid some CC. Panatom won't have the easiest time ganking out that lane either. So, sure, you lose that global presence. The Camelot Kings will not be able to just force fights anywhere on the map and always have a numbers advantage, at least for a moment or so while we wait for Netroid's cooldown. The Leviathans still playing with a slight lead. Over-aggressive in their positioning. Wrong Yu lines up against 3 and will see himself out. I think the Camelot Kings are just fine with the pace, though. I mean, the gold lead has been cut a little bit, still hovering around that 900 mark, but the Kings' composition is all about scaling, and so far the Leviathans have not quite been able to push this lead. In about 2 minutes, when the Pyromancer spawns up for the first time, that is one POI where the Leviathans can try and force some engagements. They've got great shred potential on the solo side of the map. Kleena's going to afford that to you, no matter who you send over to help her out with it. So Panatom plus Yarkor could do a Pyro on their own.
Shinto could be in some trouble, pulled back by Genetics, but the Axe is going to force some damage back onto the Hugbug. Captain Twig coming around the corner, finding Rongyu with the ultimate, the Shred. He's there, but I'm not sure he has the damage just yet. Forced to back away. Shinto, too much of a threat for now. Genetics should take some more poke here, but that should be all she wrote for that fight. Mifflin, I wanna go back to the lead real quick, and I gotta say it's impressive that the Camelot Kings have been able to keep this gold lead at a stable 1,000.
Yeah, not much has changed. The Kings farming up their own side of the jungle very well. The Leviathans peeking their head in the Kings jungle, but haven't quite been able to hit pay dirt. Great ultimate!
Rongyu gets knocked straight up, and Netroid is here to try and claim some extra damage. Rongyu able to make his way out, but Shinto not quite fast enough. Blinking forward, Twig looking to find the damage onto Rongyu. There's gonna be one, there's gonna be two. Shinto takes a spill, and now Panatom getting hugged in by Genetics. Shouldn't be too much more chase potential here by the boys in red. But Leviathans find an unfortunate double death there. Gold Fury might be ambitious here for the Camelot Kings, but it's all going to be about whether or not they can keep the Leviathans off. Zapman still trying to come in.
Panatom hovering nearby with the ultimate, but it's a slight reset from the Camelot Kings. They want Zap instead. Airstrike defensively will get him over the wall, but all the Kings got to do is pull the objective again.
But Panatom has that ultimate still available to him. If he can find even 2 people with that ult, I think it's all over for the Kings there in terms of that one particular engagement. So they do drop the Gold Fury. I like the idea. They have to force one person at least from the Leviathans to show presence, and it's just unfortunate for them there that they weren't quite able to capitalize off of Zapman stepping up. But they do test their newfound evenness. That is exactly what we have as the Camelot Kings pull the Leviathans lead back down to just under 200 gold.
I wonder if the Kings had the opportunity to switch their target. Chasing Zapman, pretty low odds return, airstrike over the wall, has beads available. Jingwei generally one of the safest gods in the game, so very difficult for the Camelot Kings to shut him down. But with Panatom as aggressively positioned as he was, Mercury sure has got semi-global presence, largely limited when you're inside the jungle. All those winding paths will make it very difficult for him to use Sonic Boom to escape. I think maybe the Kings could have gone on him instead and potentially found their pick to fall back to the objective, but instead focused their attention on the Zapman, who's very able to just leave that situation. The Kings not quite able to hold on to the objective. It's deja vu of game 1, but in reverse. It was the Leviathans who were able to pick up an objective to even out the game. This time it's the Camelot Kings. Don't quite get the objective, but even out the game at the exact same point. 11 minutes in, not anything really separating these two teams, barring some slight experience gaps here or there. 1 level in the jungle for Twig, 1 level for Big Man Tings, and potentially a Gold Fury if they've got their way.
No eyes from the Leviathans able to peer into this Gold Fury pit for now. With the Spirit of the Nine wins, that should be a free objective for the Camelot Kings. Shinto, though, still trying to get aggressive. Captain Twig, Sonic, boom! Into the ground. Shinto forced to use the beats, but Netroid and Genetic both getting stunned out, hit by Rongyu. There's the Earthen Fury, and there's a double kill for Panatom.
Big Man Tings and Genetics on the retreat, 4 on the heel. Big Man Tings will make his way back to base, but Genetics not nearly as lucky. Still has got the Scarab's Blessing, and will extend his life, if only for a moment. Good jukes, but Tier 2 tower can't save you from 4. The Camelot Kings trade out 3, but do take the neutral objective for themselves and potentially some more. Panatom has taken some pretty aggressive pathing, is able to rejoin his team. The Leviathans, great response there. Once the Camelot Kings dedicate Spirit of the Nine Winds to secure the objective, it is so hard for the Camelot Kings to disengage from that point. And the Leviathans, with great chase and a phenomenal ultimate from Panatom, are able to turn the tides yet again. But with the objective going to the Kings, Golden Experience still largely the exact same as what we saw. The Leviathans had 800 gold earlier, and well, they got it back.
It's looking pretty even. Once again, we might be seeing another game of tennis coming out from the Camelot Kings. We saw it in their match against the Tartarus Titans earlier on. So, just playing once again for that late game. I'll go back to what Gore and Ro were saying earlier on. We can kind of discount the first 15 minutes of this game, regardless of how they go. We're getting to that 15-minute mark now where things are going to start changing around Genetics. Already finding scramming onto Rongyu. Yakor should be able to find a wall here, no CC, for the Camelot Kings to really lock down the cleaner just yet. But Panatom charges up the ultimate. That's going to be enough for the Camelot Kings to not decide to go for that Pyromancer.
I think had Variety connected that first ability in the blue stance, Yakor would have been too low HP to get into that wall, and likely could have opened up another opportunity for the Camelot Kings to look towards that Pyromancer. Slight mechanical misplay from the Soul Laner will create a net wash scenario. The only thing separating these two teams now are the relics, and it's a pretty substantial separation. The Camelot Kings have got the majority available to them, whereas the Leviathans have used a whole lot of their relics and just attempted escapes. Beads lost to Yakor and Panatom. You haven't got second relic available just yet for Rongyu, who's sitting at level 9. No beads for Shinto. I'd like to see the Camelot Kings try and force a fight in the next 30 or so seconds.
But it's going to be the Leviathans forcing the Pyromancer, or at least attempting to. Frenzy has been popped in here. Spirit of the Lion wins, but it's going to be out-secured. The Atlantis Leviathans find the objective, and the Kings, caught sleeping a little bit on these relic timers, weren't able to push their advantage. Netroid, what out in the jungle here, potentially looking to find some aggression onto Zapman. The ultimate comes through. Here's the trade, airstrike forced from Zap, but here's Captain Twig with the blink.
It's a blink in, slice and dice, immune out by the beads. Panatom, acting as goaltender, will maintain the life of his ADC, and the Camelot Kings will have to let this one fizzle out. But yet again, it's an expensive escape for the Leviathan. Zapman losing ultimate and both relics.
Rongyu could be in some trouble. The only man stood under the tier 1 tower, which should surely take a fall here on the left-hand side. He's going to take up some positioning between the two and just let that tier 1 go for now. It's a little bit of extra gold in hand for the Camelot Kings to start making up this gold. And in all honesty, Mifflin, despite being, what, 1,500 gold behind, the Camelot Kings are still more than willing to take these aggressive options.
Yeah, as long as Netroid has essentially soloed Zapman beforehand, I'm sure the fight feels pretty good for him, and that's exactly what happens. Netroid getting the better end of the 1v1. But looking at some of the experience gaps that have continued to develop, now Genetics 3 levels down on Rongyu, generally support levels, not the biggest deal, but approaching level 12 this much earlier means Rongyu will have that secondary relic available this much earlier. So the Camelot Kings will not have really a whole great time fighting around Genetics. Scarab's Blessing will do a whole lot on its own. Khepri pretty resistant to falling behind, just having a revive in general, in spite of how little HP anyone will revive with, as Genetics just hasn't had the levels to put points into Scarab's Blessing.
Some HP is better than no HP.
Yes, of course, and they still have got that. But I think the Camelot Kings would likely be very well served by having Genetics absorb some experience and gold on the map.
Back to neutral, these two teams. At the moment, nothing to fight over, no objectives just yet. The Gold Fury will be spawning in the next couple of seconds, though, so keep your eyes glued towards that left-hand side of the map, ladies and gentlemen, because that is where these two teams will surely be looking to continue their aggression. The Leviathans in a pretty decent position here, about 1,500 gold in the lead. Have a little bit of a, well, more importantly, the experience differential in favor of the Leviathans. The Oni Fury straight away on the menu. Frenzy already popped. And the just the zoning from Rongyu, super strong there. No one from the Kings allowed to step up.
Yeah, Rongyu places those walls so well. Genetics doesn't want to walk in because he's kind of low level, thinks to himself, well, if I get stunned, they might just turn on me and I could instantly die. And Twig says, well, it's not going to be me. I'm playing an assassin. So they both just sit there as Rongyu stares him down, and the rest of the Leviathans take down the objective for themselves. Left side should have favored the Leviathans with all the wards they've got established around the Gold Fury pit. Right side, though, bit of a no man's land. Both the Camelot Kings and the Leviathans now vying and jockeying for position around the Fire Giant pit itself. I don't think that the Camelot Kings are in a position where they could pull the objective, but considering how quickly the Leviathans shut down Gold Fury, I think they could do very similar things to the Fire Giant on the right-hand side. If Shinto, Zapman, and Panatom are hitting the same thing, it'll die quick.
Here comes the wraparound. BMT could be in danger. Yakor popping out of the wall. Genetics already at half HP, but Shinto will jump away and trade the root from Netrioid enough to keep him, but he is in trouble now. Scratch that. The dash into the wall is going to find the Hunter safe for now. Panathom, Yakor, and Zapman still hovering around that left-hand side in the jungle. The Camelot Kings seemingly have enemies from all sides. BMT not quite in range for the spit, the wind spit. And Variety going to teleport over here to the left-hand side, just canceling that one out.
Genetics dropped low in mid, trying his best to create space for his team, but the Leviathans with very aggressive positioning will have the pincer. Rongyu and Yakor between the towers. The Camelot Kings may just have to give this one up.
Variety gets picked up by Panatom, and the CC chain is on point. But luckily for Variety, has the dash, the CC immune dash at that away. He's going to be just fine for now. But meanwhile, the damage on the tier 1 tower is pretty substantial. Luckily for the Camelot Kings, that Trebuchet was taken down, but Shinto is here. No slouch to dealing tower damage as the left tier 2 falls down as well. There's a huge gold swing in favor of the Leviathans yet again.
The Leviathans just putting so much pressure on the map. In having two members hover between tier 2 and tier 1 amid, controls the rotation in the Camelot Kings. Big Man Ting's forced to reset to his own tier 2 tower. Variety caught out in the jungle trying to rotate in and alleviate some of that pressure in mid. Opens up the door on the left-hand side, and the Leviathans slowly are able to split the entirety of the map. That's not a standard split push. That's not, hey, I'm just going to go where they aren't. It was active decision-making, active shot calling from the Leviathans that created that opportunity, in the Camelot Kings caught a bit unawares on the map. We'll start to see some of the largest separations so far in Game 2. The Leviathans have got enough of a lead now, I think, and enough burn potential that they could go ahead and just either pull the Fire Giant or the Pyromancer. The only recourse for the Camelot Kings is team fight potential, maybe an initiation from Variety, because, again, can't be Genetics. That guy is incredibly squishy. Or even steal potential with Spirit of the Nine Winds.
And there's going to be the Spirit of the Nine Winds. That man uses the Aegis. I'm not sure that that was necessary, but uses it nonetheless. And the Pyromancer will go in favor of the Leviathans. That's going to be a frenzy in favor for that Spirit of the Nine Winds. So both teams do commit a decent amount to the objective, but thus far, it's seemingly a death by 1,000 cuts here, Mifflin. The Leviathans, they're not overstretching at any point, and the Kings are just slowly getting cut by these objectives that are being taken down by the blue team. And this time around, it's gonna start looking rough for the Camelot Kings if they can't bind some band-aids.
And you know what? This was my concern every time I see Kukulkan. The Camelot Kings have got 2 kills, and we've seen exactly 1 play from Big Man Ting so far, which was a 2-man ultimate. Since then, the Kukulkan has gotten relatively low value, has put out a good amount of poke. Zephyr making up the bulk of the damage output, the 6,600 you're seeing from Big Man Tings. But as far as dedicated initiation goes, the Camelot Kings can't have Genetics starting off these fights with Abduct, because he's just now ticked over to level 12, has only got 2 items in his back pocket, so not incredibly tanky. Variety has been largely controlled in a lot of these team fights.
Twig.
It's so hard.
Twig's in trouble. I'm not sure he's going to be able to get through this one. And with a pick up from Panatom, scoops him back into the line of ghosts. Variety now under tower against 4, but here comes the ultimate from Netrioid, trying to slow down these enemies. The Leviathan still trying to get aggressive here. But it's going to be 5 people, and with that 1 kill in hand, and Netrioid choosing to not commit the ultimate to go to the right-hand side, this could be an open Fire Giant for the Leviathans.
It's burning quickly. 30% on the Fire Giant. Nobody in range to defend. The Camelot Kings are going to let this one go. No steal attempt either. Thought maybe we'd see Big Man Tings try and approach with the Spirit of the Nine Winds, just throw the ultimate over the wall, but not the case this time. The Leviathans a little bit too healthy and a little bit too strong. Will not allow that opportunity. And even Netrioid, left alone on the left side of the map, not healthy enough to take down that tier 2. The Leviathans in a position to keep up their siege and keep up their pressure. Not many towers standing between the reigning world champions and the exposed birds of the Camelot Kings. Base defense, a major strength of Kukulkan, though. We talked about how he's able to keep these minion waves out of his tier 1. Same can be true of the Phoenix. So, going to be difficult for the Leviathans to work through that. That said, the range, damage potential, and pick potential, incredibly high.
Sonic Boom is going to catch Genetics off guard, and that's going to be Spirit of the Nine Winds finding absolutely no one. Genetics is going to fall down, but there is going to be a trade. Panatom pulls in trade. Variety now rooted out by the Terror, still trying to trade in and fight Zapman, but the damage onto Variety is just too much, and Yakor through the wall finds a kill under the solo laner.
Leviathans dropping this tier 2 tower with extreme speed, continue their onslaught. Stun no good on Netrioid, and Twig on the right side of the map has been spotted now. I believe Yakor locks eyes with them. The Leviathans will not keep up this pressure, though. Don't love their odds in a 4 versus 3, soon to be 4, as Genetics, one benefit of being so low level is how quickly you respawn. Level 12, that respawn timer, relatively short, able to rejoin his team. The Camelot Kings are just in a position where I feel like it's never going to be them starting the fight. It is never going to be an opportunity for the Kings to play proactively. It's all about the counterpunch. If you're a Kings fan, you're hoping the Leviathans overstay on a Phoenix Siege. You're hoping they overcommit to shutting down one of these frontliners on the Camelot Kings. Had Genetics been able to reposition himself a little bit further towards his team, could have potentially been more than just Panatom trading out his own life there. But not the case. A level 12, now 13 Capri, with a cloak in the 3rd slot, 24 minutes in the game, is going to die to this pick-based composition of the Leviathans. The Camelot Kings can continually rest on the fact that they've got great base defense. Even then, the Leviathan's not willing to even attempt sieging the mid-Phoenix. As long as Big Man Tings is alive, so are the hopes of the Camelot Kings. But with that said, that puts a massive target onto Big Man Tings' back. If Panatom can connect a Sonic Boom, if Yakor can dive onto this Kukulkan, anything that removes Kukulkan from the team fight, even for a moment, you don't even necessarily need to kill him. As long as you can remove Big Man Tings from a siege defense, it becomes so much easier for the Leviathans. Double Hunter composition only needs just a moment left alone with one of these birds.
Coming up towards the left-hand side, Leviathans are looking to try and close this game out. The Phoenixes are, of course, the objective. We've got a 2-3 split here, really forcing the Camelot Kings to choose. And I'm not sure they're going to be here in time on the right-hand side. Scratch that, not quite as much damage on Yakor and Panatom's side as maybe I expected at the very least. But both of these Phoenixes are in question at the moment. BMT luckily able to drop that tornado. And this is the power of Kukulkan in a siege environment. Just no way for those waves to get in.
Yeah, you might not need waves if the map's split as hard as it is. 2 versus 1.
Twig gets crit. That Panatom with a punch is going to be able to deal so much damage. But Variety coming in, blinking forward, trying to find some support for his jungler. Netrioid also trying to come in. But meanwhile, peep your eyes to the left-hand side. Zapman able to close out one bud, and now charging into the base. The Leviathans looking to get aggressive. Genetics is melted, but Zapman is killed straight back down. Spirit of the Nine Winds able to close that one out. Now Variety looking to get aggressive himself. Yakor still at half HP, and Panatom going straight back over to this right side Phoenix.
Panatom puts a couple of auto attacks into it, but a blink forward from Captain Twig will close that gap. Good damage output, finished off by Netrioid. Panatom loses his life for half of a right Phoenix. Left side Phoenix, the most valuable, is taken. by the Leviathans. Now the Camelot Kings on defense will be able to at least probably take a Pyromancer, potentially a tier 1, but it's going to be slow rolling. Nobody from the Leviathans around to defend. Considering the pacing of that Fire Giant and when that respawn is going to come through, the Camelot Kings will have a slight opportunity. About 5 seconds left on Panatom's respawn. By the time Fire Giant starts barreling towards the earth, the Camelot Kings could try Hail Mary, pull the Fire Giant, strip that away from the Leviathans while they've got a numbers advantage. But with the map state as it is, Fireman Wave already starting to knock on the door of this left side Phoenix. The Camelot Kings will be trading Titan HP for the neutral objective.
But at this point in the game, Mifflin, it might be what they have to do, and it looks like that is going to be the decision. 5 people grouped here. Rongyu,
that's a good pull.
Target, looking to find the damage. Rongyu should be the first casualty of war here. Netrio goes straight up, looking to find potentially more onto
Watch
Yarkor.
Yarkor.
Trying to find some damage onto Captain Twig, but the revive is going to be good for now. Yarkor trying to find his way back into the wall, and he's going to be safe for now. But peep at
Good
the
Zephyr.
base. Ladies and gentlemen, the base is falling low, but Captain Twig backed in time to save the life of the Titan. Not that it was in danger of dying, but that's going to be a lot of HP saved. But with Captain Twig backing off the base, even the kill onto Rongyu is not going to be enough to help the Kings try and push onto this Fire Giant for now.
20 seconds left on Rongyu's respawn. Twig not sticking around on the left side of the map tells me Fire Giant still the name of the game. The Camelot Kings want to keep the Leviathans on the back foot.
Sonic Boom charging up here. Panatom still looking to create as much disruption as humanly possible, but the Camelot Kings, they know they're on a timer. They got to try and look for another pick, and it looks
Good
like
axe.
it's going to be the target, but Zen Genetics oversteps just slightly, and he's going to get put in the ground. Shinto able to claim credit for that kill, and now the Camelot Kings in an awful position. Netrioid uses those speeds perfectly. Panatom not able to find the Sonic Boom.
Panatom left alone is able to avoid the damage from Variety and blinks himself out of danger. The Leviathans, now 5 strong, have got minion waves in the base of the Camelot Kings. 20 seconds left on Genetics respawn. Fire Giant pulled out. I think the Leviathans have weathered the storm for long enough. Keep your eyes on Twig.
He blinking forward just at the moment, trying to cause a distraction. Panatom is going to be the target. Slice and Dice finds him, and that could be just enough to delay the Leviathans from getting the objective.
50 seconds left on Panatom. It's been a back and forth battle around this Fire Giant dance, and the longer the dance continues, the Camelot Kings will have less and less Fire Minion waves to contend with. The Leviathans will pull it out yet again, but keep your eyes on Tings. He's got ultimate available.
There's the ultimate already used by Captain Twig, trying to find the damage, and Zapman is going to get hit by the Spirit of the Nine Winds. YOLO nuts again. Unfortunately, Zephyr not on the mark, but Rongyu surely falls down here. Netrioid claims credit for that, and now at a 3v5 position, Mifflin, the Camelot Kings, could claim this one back with the Fire Giant falling low, and down it goes.
The Camelot Kings with Fire Giant on 5 belts can continue their onslaught. Plenty of towers maintained by the Leviathans. 3 tier 2 towers still standing. Left side Phoenix has got a Fire Minion wave on its heels. Big Man Tings has been spending a whole lot of time clearing waves and will do so a little bit longer for his team to maintain the base. Panatom on the respawn. Rongyu 20 seconds away as he thinks about his mistakes in the grayscale. The Camelot Kings from the brink put themselves in a winning game state scenario. Drop the Gold Fury, start to group up, push out these left side waves, rejoin Big Man Tings on the map, and the Camelot Kings can keep up their aggression. We've had plenty of opportunities to discuss and evaluate the effectiveness of the Camelot Kings' composition in base defense, but on offense, it is not so simple. It does not translate 1-to-1. Big Man Tings will have an easier time applying damage, and those tornadoes will essentially be no-play zones in these restricted spaces on the map around Tier 2s, around Phoenixes. But Netrioid gonna have a slightly harder time fighting in a offensive capacity. The ability to jump in a wall, sure, great to immune damage, but considering where you're forced to stand on Phoenix Siege, you're essentially pretty far away from any given wall, so Netrioid's effectiveness going to take a slight hit. Genetics has been struggling still to find these initiations. Anytime he abducts anyone, it essentially just costs him his life. We saw in the last fight, it was Shinto tosses out the axe and with just the Uul combo drops Genetics to around 50% HP on his own. That's not any easier when there's a bird shooting fireballs at you as well. Variety will be able to hold up the bulk of that defense, and between Fire Giant and Stone of Gaia, should be able to absorb a good amount of tower shots and resustain it with ease. but it's all about how well Captain Twig can get into those backlines, whether or not Big Man Tings is connecting these ultimates, and if Netroid is allowed any time with a Phoenix. As of now, the Leviathans have done a good job of slowing down the siege, but how well will Shinto perform on a non-standard mage in a defense situation? Waves are going to be very easy for the Kings to push in.
That is the question hanging in the balance at the moment. Captain Twig will move over to the mid Phoenix and just try and split up the map a little bit more. The Leviathans now have to choose between that mid and left Phoenix. But Captain Twig now moving back over the left-hand side, really looking to commit with this next wave. Yarkor throws out that ultimate, trying to just clear out the wave for now. And a nice hail of arrows is going to do some decent poke to a few members of the Camelot Kings. Still waiting right now for that opening to go in.
Captain Twig lines up against Panatom in mid, loses out on a good deal of his HP just in trade. Should be able to resustain with Fire Giant. Now the Variety's rotated over. It's a 3v3 on the left and a 2v2 in mid. Twig and Variety taking turns, rotating towards the center of the map.
This could be the opening that the Camelot Kings have been waiting for. Genetics, though, takes a huge front load of damage. At some point, the Kings have to pull this pin. They need to either go in or get out, and it looks like the call is to evacuate. 40 seconds left on the Fire Giant, and this is once again the Kings classic. They know that they have the space. They've been able to translate that Fire Giant and close up the lead. Take a look at the gold chart, Mifflin, and just watch it plummet back down to that neutral line. 2,000 gold in it, not even that, 1,000 after this Pyromancer. In fact, I think that makes it even here, even in favor of Camelot Kings. So they've been able to do a lot with that first Fire Giant, and I think they are more than happy to just go back, reset, and get ready for the first EFG of the game.
Yeah, first enhanced Fire Giant. From a neutral state, though, the Camelot Kings are not coming in with an advantage, and the Leviathans aren't either. Sure, it's a pretty significant improvement in situation for the Camelot Kings, who are having to contend with fire minion waves and a gold deficit and an experience deficit. Now, everyone who is, well, needs to be level 20 is, and both supports rapidly approaching that 18 level mark as well. So, Genetics and Rongyu, the only ones still needing farm on the map. Genetics finally starting to get some defense to his name with this build, should be able to act as that initiator. I think that's the reason we see the Camelot Kings so willing to reset themselves, realizing that Variety or Genetics both not really in a position where they could just walk into a Phoenix line. So the Camelot Kings would love to find a pick in the jungle. The same can be said of the Leviathans. Kills might be more important than the Fire Giant itself as of now. Both teams have proven to me that their base defense is incredibly hard to deal with. The Camelot Kings by having just a great defensive composition that doesn't translate well to aggression, and the Leviathans by just playing the map very well. We're able to keep the Camelot Kings guessing on when they're allowed to initiate, who's going to be in the defensive situation, who's the 4-1 split, and all this has added up to pretty significant margins. And, well pointed out, Blaze the Emperor's armor putting a good deal of work for the Leviathans.
Absolutely. Just makes those Phoenixes and Towers a little bit harder to siege, but now Camelot Kings looking to square up. Rongyu, potentially the target there. Spirit of the Nine Winds coming through. Does do a huge amount of damage, but it's not enough to kill. Meanwhile, Panatom has to ult away. Yarkor takes a huge amount of shred there from the ultimate from Captain Twig, and now the root coming through from Netroid. Looking to fight into Yarkor, and there
Just
it
does
is.
it.
That's going to be a dead solo laner on the side of the Leviathans, and now in a 4v5 situation, the Levi's want nothing to do with the enhanced Fire Giant.
That has got to be such a difficult decision to make for Netroid, who turns a corner blind to finish off the kill on his own. Enhanced Fire Giant on 5 members of the Camelot Kings, and keep your eyes on Shinto. He's pincered.
Potentially very much in danger. The bead's already expended, and there's going to be stun from Variety. The Aegis already popped, and down falls the mid laner Leviathans. 2 men down. 2 Phoenixes to defend. 3 Phoenixes to defend, even. I miscounted that. I thought that one on the left was already gone.
Well, gonna need to defend at least 1, because that's all it's gonna take to expose the Titan. The Camelot Kings strip away the right and start to approach the throne room.
They're not thinking about the mid or the left Phoenix at the moment. They're just thinking about Panatom here under that middle Phoenix. And now that bird is gonna be cooked. 2 birds are down, and now the Camelot Kings raining through into the base. There's going to be the cast Unk looking to stop any form of healing. The damage is raining through onto the Titan. Spirit of the Nine Winds, and there is no defense for the Leviathans this time around. The Camelot Kings are the first to qualify for Week 6.
High energy in the Camelot Kings booth and well earned. That is a back and forth battle. This was not the Camelot Kings elongating a match and keeping it neutral for the longest time. This is the Atlantis Leviathans flubbing aggression, not quite able to confirm Phoenixes, not quite able to find the separation they needed to confirm a winning map state. The Camelot Kings essentially contending with down Phoenixes, off-kilter respawn timers, Genetics who spent the first 30 minutes of this game under level 12, it felt like. Just all leads up eventually to one team fight where the Camelot Kings are able to desync the death timers on the Atlantis Leviathans. Take a incredible base defense and incredible Fire Giant dance that slowly turns into a game state, as things do in 9-5, where the Camelot Kings are able to close out the match.
Truly the masters of digging in their heels and making sure one way or another they close it out. We're going to throw it to the desk to see what's coming up next.
That one was awesome. It was fun to watch. Explosive energy. They had mentioned it there. You could see it in the King's booth.
We
could hear it. It was very loud and very vocal. You even said, wow, that's actually a little bit more than I would have expected.
Yeah, to be fair, they've just taken down the world champions and now put the world champions up against the ropes. They have to win the next game. Leviathans do to stay in this tournament.
And that's where things get really interesting. Kings now just straight up advance to Saturday.
They're happy.
They get to skip out on tomorrow. And immediately that you're starting to talk about a guaranteed certain number of prize pooling, a step closer to getting first place. I think everybody feels a lot better on their team, but also being able to really kind of showcase how strong this team is early on. And they had said it, but like, a lot of this game wasn't going their way, bro. I mean, it did not start out very comfortably for them. You can see the kill count kind of kept close, but the gold was really getting out of hand at a certain point.
Yeah, just like they struggled against Titans, right? Titans had the early game advantage. Leviathans have the early game advantage. But as soon as Kings get to this late game point, as soon as Genetics decides that he's happy to team fight and happy to play the game again, then they just win in these team fights. They just seem to be the superior macro team, the superior team fight team, and you don't want to go up against them in the late game, especially if you can't match their team comp.
The timer always it changes a little bit, but anywhere essentially 15 to 18 minutes in my mind is like, doesn't matter to the Kings. If they can make it to that point and it's roughly equal, they're going to win the game somehow, right? It doesn't matter what happens in the next 10 minutes. They're going to find the way to finally get there. And again, an explosive win for them, being able to now move forward onto Saturday, still awaiting who will be their opponents, but a huge win for them. And like you said,
happy boys.
A much more interesting area for the Leviathans, a team that has been struggling so far throughout Phase 1 after winning the World Championship earlier this year in January. Things have just not been going their way. The Kings, however, I think it was, 1 week that kind of slipped up in Phase 1 that maybe brought them down in the standings a little bit more compared to where they would have been. But otherwise, this has just been their year so far, their season.
Yeah, and a perfect adjustment to the meta as well. Something that maybe the meta fell in their lap a little bit and something they're already good at. But immediately, as soon as it comes to at this point in the meta, they adopt it and they say, this is how we want to play the game. They've come out with a very effective strategy. Not so similar to Hex Mambo, who just kind of pushed things to the late game. Kings seem to be pushing that to the next level.
Well, it's been a treat to watch them so far. And of course, I'm excited to watch more of them. I kind of upset that I have to wait so long to do so, a couple more days, but I'm sure they're pretty happy about it. We can talk to Variety about this win and what it means. Immediately though, Variety, the first thing that comes to my mind, y'all were very, very vocal about this win, so how much did it mean to you?
It meant a lot because, not going to lie, going into this week, things in scrims were just not great. The team atmosphere was really down. But yesterday, we went out for a little meal to talk about the games, and like this weekend, we just said, you know what, let's just give it our best. Like me and Ben, we've had like plenty of teams where we've had really bad weeks going into lands, and you come out just because you got nothing to lose at that point. So everyone's just giving it the roll, and you know, it's nice to remind ourselves they're actually a good team and that scrims don't matter a bit. So yeah.
Well, I think you submit that pretty easily. 3 wins today, you come out. Admittedly, 2 of them kind of seem slippery at the very beginning. Earlier up against the Titans, but here up against the Levi's. Things get out of hand pretty quickly. So what is it that helps turn things around for you guys?
I think it's partially just the way we see the meta is. There isn't really an early game. Well, there isn't obviously an early game. You can obviously snowball a game still, but you can just hold out. You can give up Fire Giant. You can just go late game. It's really hard to siege as a tank now if you want to like just roar up siege a Phoenix or a tower. So, you know, I think we're very confident on late game and just giving up objectives and just hanging on to late.
Well, so far, it's been exactly that. Really confident late games, a lot of success, 3 wins, and you get to advance. So congratulations, Variety.
Thank you very much.
Big win for you. We'll see you on Saturday for more games.
Thank you.
A very fun weekend, I think, ahead of us. If we're going to get games like this, I mean, that's just Levi's and Kings. It's not even starting to factor in all of the other SPL teams that are going to be fighting. We do still, though, need to find a team that's going to join them. The Kings, they've got their free trip on to Saturday, but the Levi's, the Warriors, and the Titans are still fighting for one more spot today. We've got 2 more best of 3s. Warriors and Titans up next. Loser goes home. And then 1 more winner moves on from that best of 3 later today. Match 25 of Masters. There's been quite a few, and there's quite a few more, Ro.
That's right. I mean, I'm looking forward to this next matchup. Warriors against Titans, 2 teams that have both gotten active in the early game so far. We just saw a pretty great active game, or an active set, really, with the Kings and Leviathans. So I expect maybe even a higher activity rate in these 2 teams. Then again, maybe teams start to notice, you know, Kings, maybe they're right about the meta. We want to slow down a bit. We want to pull things to the late game. So it's going to be interesting throughout the day, throughout the tournament, teams adjust to the meta.
I'm really interested as well because Variety had just mentioned you can still snowball a game. It might just be a little more difficult now to try and get that much control. I'm wondering if we're going to see any of these SPL teams figure out exactly how to do it. My money's on the Dragons. They always seem to find a way to snowball some of these games. But that's going to do it for the Kings and the Leviathans. Congratulations to the Kings moving forward. We'll find out who's going to be joining them right after this.